Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining today's live stream main news update from me for 25th of August. Now it's 3 p.m. here in Moscow, middle of the day, and I try my best to prepare informative, interesting program for you. And in case you find it interesting, please indicate that, click the like button, leave some commentary, or even better, dear friends, if you can switch to my Rumble channel. I'm streaming simultaneously on both my channels on YouTube and Rumble. And if you have account on Rumble, please join our community there and watch my updates on Rumble. YouTube might take down my channel anytime, by the way. Yesterday, I received another warning that I have to go through some, I don't know, training or something. Otherwise, they would not remove a warning from my channel. YouTube is led by scumbags. You know this, isn't it? YouTube is an asset of Zionists, obviously, and the Western ruling class. So they are suppressing all the channels, especially ones from Russia that are sharing with the public information that does not go uh, well with the Western propaganda, right? Does not coincide with the Western propaganda. Anyways, dear friends, um, you can initiate conversation about any topic during the stream and even before the stream. By the way, you can send your question or comment through PayPal or Boosty anytime you want, really, and I will react on it during the live stream after news segment. And when it is a live stream, of course, you can use super chat feature on Rumble to either highlight any topic you want or to share your opinion or ask question. Especially if you want to support my work, because super chat, is a paid feature, right? Okay, that's been said, dear friends. Of course, I'd be grateful to everyone who will decide to support my worker and help me maintain this project. You can do it through several means. You can subscribe to my Patreon page, and also on the page on Boosty, if you want to, of course, or if you can support me that way. You can use a PayPal or a premium subscription gift card, for example, on Rumble. Everything counts, everything helps massively, dear friends. So all the links under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. That's being said, I expect YouTube will suppress today's live stream big time. Probably not even 0.01% of members will receive notification, and that's why it will be even more helpful if you can switch to my Rumble channel. Right now, 9 members are watching on Rumble, 17 on YouTube. Not clearly my channel is not very popular, by the way, out there. Not surprisingly, because after all, that's what happens when you are in the shadow bar. But anyways, let's go for the news, right? Let's go for the news now. And I will start, and I have a lot of information from ultimatum that Vatican brought to Moscow, by the way, now, to American plane that landed in Moscow. Also update about zone of special military operation, Middle East, this SMO, and everything, right? I have a bigger program for you. So let's start. Let's start with today's update from Russian Defense Ministry that Russian armed forces liberated Anovka settlement in a DPR. And I will remind you, if I may, that yesterday I reported about another 3 settlements that were liberated by Russian forces. For example, Dolinka in the Zaporozhye region, Kucherov Yar in the DPR, and Pershetravne in Sumy region. Let me show you now on the map location of this settlement. So this is today's update, Anovka settlement, which is located basically. I mean, I don't know how I even say it. This one is Dabropolye city, by the way, right? And this is Anovka settlement. Village is basically linked to the city itself. So one might even argue that Russian troops created a significant, massive bridgehead inside Dobropolia city itself, and all this area now is under Russian control. This was possible, I believe, due to recent advances of the Russian armed forces in the area of Lysenko settlement, when Russian troops cut supply and support line that connects Dobropolia with Kramatorsk, another stronghold of Kiev regime. Now Russian troops are advancing from the northern side inside the Dobropolia itself, and hopefully soon this town will become under full Russian control and will be completely liberated. So that's an important development there. When it comes to DPR, dear friends, take a look at these icons here. In the past 24 hours, Russian armed forces conducted a sectoral scale clearing operation, I will say, right? Exactly opposite of Kramatorsk, Slavyansk fortified area. And each of these icons, by the way, indicates a clearing operation that was conducted by Russian troops while neutralizing enemy forces. I think it's worth noticing that Russian troops are further increasing their presence in a Stara Dubovka settlement right next to Seversky Donets River, which is the northern side of Slavyansk. Also, Russian troops are further improving their positions inside the Nikolaevka settlement. Clearing operation is already underway, and there are heavy fights right now in the stadium area, for example, in this, it's like a park, isn't it, around the stadium, some forestry. So Russian troops are in this part, and they are conducting clearing operation to establish control over this forestry area and the stadium to move into residential areas after that. So significant progress, of course, of the Russian armed forces. Basically, forward units of the Russian military are right opposite to Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. But as I've said many times before, I don't expect frontal assault to happen from the eastern side on positions of Kiev regime inside Kramatorsk or Slavyansk. I think Russian troops will conduct pincer operation from southern western and the northern western side to encircle Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Drushkovka agglomeration and conduct assault operations on the Kiev regime garrisons in these strongholds from the western side. That makes more sense because the eastern parts of these defensive lines are, of course, heavily fortified since 2014, while western side is not fortified that much because they did not expect, right, Russian troops to arrive from the west, from the rear. So that's what is going on, by the way, there. Also, as I already said, yesterday I reported about advances of the Russian armed forces in other directions. Let me update the map. So this is settlement Dolinka, right? That was liberated yesterday, for example, that I reported about it. Also, this is a settlement of Kucherov Yar that is under Russian control now in the DPR, not far away from Anovka settlement. And when it comes to Sumy region, where is that settlement? This is Pershetrane settlement or area, and settlement is tiny, of course, but it is important that Russian troops establish control over this forestry here. And who knows, maybe we will see soon Russian offensive operations in Stepovoe direction in Sumy region. That's when it comes to confirm the advances of the Russian armed forces, confirmed by Russian Defense Ministry, and liberated settlements. Also, I want to share with you this information that yesterday news broke after my main update, after my live stream, that there was an exchange of POWs that took place between Kiev regime and Moscow. 10 Russian POWs were released, and the Russian side released 10 citizens of Ukraine. Exchange took place in Belarus, on the territory of Belarus. And on my memory, this is a smallest POW exchange that ever happened since the beginning of this conflict. 10 POWs from each side Well, you might ask her why this number is that small. There are lot more POWs actually, and this is true. There are much more POWs, of course. Uh, but I guess these 10 POWs um, probably were either heavily winded, right? And that's why separate exchange took place because transportation of this heavily winded militaries cannot be done. Um, will require more preparations, obviously, or maybe this was an exchange of officers or something, right? Because I have a question too. Why only 10? Why not more? But no one explained to us what's going on there. Anyways, it's a positive, isn't it? It's a positive step, at least on humanitarian track. So when something good is happening, of course, we have to highlight that. Also, Russian armed forces, of course, conducting long-range precision strikes on military and logistical infrastructure of the Kyiv regime. Retaliatory strikes continue non-stop, and past night, Russian armed forces launched relatively large-scale strikes on the points of concentration of Kyiv regime's forces and their military equipment, also energy infrastructure that they use to enhance their military capabilities in Zaporozhye. For example, right now on your screen, you can see aftermath of these strikes. But this is not all. Also, Russian armed forces conducted strike on a border crossing between Ukraine and Moldova. Another one was destroyed, and of course, this is important now because after establishing maritime blockade on the Western backer Ukrainian Nazi and the terrorist regime, of course, NATO backers of this regime and the regime itself is trying to redirect their movement of their military equipment or anything else, right, towards their ground crossings. And of course, it does make all the sense for Russian side to disrupt these ground-based logistical lines. After this attack on Vinogradovka Vulkaretsi border crossing between Ukraine and Moldova, traffic across the border in this area was cancelled, or at least for some time. So it's already a success, I will argue. Also, we have reports that during the past 12 hours, there were explosions in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Russian military destroyed yet another warehouse of one of their hypermarket chains there. Then, you know, dear friends, all these so-called shopping malls, and I'm saying so-called because they've been militarized. All these so-called shopping malls on Kyiv control territory, practically everywhere, being transferred into military objects. Military weapons are stored there, munition. There are assembly lines in the underground parking lots, and therefore they are legit targets, obviously. So one of the such logistical centers was destroyed yesterday in Dnipropetrovsk. Also, there were explosions in the Chernigov region, Kharkov region, Kyiv region, Nikolaev region, and Odessa region. When it comes to Odessa region, we also have an update that Russian forces struck a cargo vessel that was delivering military assets to Kyiv regime. Also, in the Yuzhny port, which is Odessa region, of course, 3 tanks containing fuel and lubricants, and also 4 storage facilities containing military equipment intended for Kyiv regime's forces were destroyed, as well as port infrastructure facilities used for unloading military cargo. In addition, 2 logistical centers were neutralized in the area of Odessa that were used also in interest of the Kyiv regime's forces. Russian strikes are not stopping, of course, and literally like a few hours ago, there was another report that another logistical center was destroyed in Ilievka settlement in Odessa region. Russian advanced ground 4 drones were deployed there to eliminate that particular target, for example. And well, maritime blockade is still in place, intensifies. Kyiv regime and its NATO backers are experiencing more and more difficulties due to this new reality. They themselves provoked, actually, right? Because Russian this maritime blockade is a response on the terrorist activity of UK, US, other NATO member states, and the Ukrainian proxies that they are conducting against Russian civilians and also against Russian maritime civilian maritime operations, right? Either Azov Sea, Black Sea, or other parts in this world, right? Many Russian vessels, commercial vessels, were targeted in different parts of this world by enemies of ours. So Moscow decided, you know what, enough is enough. Now we will establish maritime blockade. And the Kiev regime and its NATO backers are whining about it. They are not happy, clearly, right? And today, yesterday, day before yesterday, there is a gathering in Kiev and all over the Kiev controlled territory of all sorts of genocidal maniacs and mass murderers, scum of humanity, basically, that represents Western elites, Western ruling class, mainly. They went on the Kiev controlled territory. They have forums and all sorts of events. Unfortunately, Kremlin did not authorize Russian military and security services to conduct the strikes and eliminate these scumbags, which is truly unfortunate. Obviously, right? We could literally neutralize so many of enemies of Russian people, by the way, right? But yeah, it is unfortunate that Russian president has soft place for Western ruling class, so he didn't allow any strikes to be conducted on Kiev during this gathering of these genocidal maniacs from all over the Western world. And during one of their gatherings of this filth in Kiev, Zelensky stated that maritime transport has decreased 3-4 times for them since the introduction of maritime blockade by Russian forces. And he also went to say that only 3 to 4 ships are currently operational each day in Ukrainian ports. Well, this is a 3-4 far too many, obviously, right? And hopefully, Kremlin will not intervene in these matters of maritime blockade and will not order Russian militaries to ease the pressure. And if so, then I'm quite sure Russian militaries will take care of those portal infrastructure furthermore, and they will eliminate all the vessels that are managing for now to bypass this Russian maritime blockade and enter this Ukrainian, formerly Ukrainian, in reality, this is all our Russian ports, by the way, right? That was given to this creation of the Bolsheviks. Ukraine. So hopefully soon, not a single vessel will enter ports in Odessa or Nikolaev region as long as this historically Russian territory is not being liberated. I hope so. But yes, they are whining, by the way. Kiev regime is whining. Their Western backers, masters are whining about. Good. RIA Novosti meanwhile reports that during the past night, Russian armed forces also eliminated assembly lines and the launch sites of British-made Flamingo missiles. This is a British-made missiles, by the way, of course, cruise missiles. Kiev regime only sticks label on it, and that's that, right? And the Western propaganda pushes this narrative that this is a Ukrainian domestically built missile, which is nonsense. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it, right? With the exception of this zombified majority in the Western world, right, that buys anything they've been told from Western MSN. That has nothing to do with the actual journalism, of course. So also good news there. But unfortunately, due to massive involvement of collective Western countries in this war against the Russian people that Western ruling class is waging, those NATO countries, those Western countries, of course, are actively involved in a mass production of all sorts of weapons for the regime, munition, everything else, and therefore they are on a daily basis transferring hundreds, thousands of drones on the Kiev controlled territory, and these drones and in many cases missiles are of course used against Russian people, against Russian Federation, And unfortunately, Russian air defense forces have no break, by the way. They are dealing with these incoming aerial targets literally hour by hour, every single day, every single night. Past night, although, was relatively easy. I mean, if I can use this word, compared to other nights, because 148 drones were intercepted only, according to Defense Ministry, while there are nights, dear friends, that are 5, 6, 7, 800 drones are intercepted. So therefore, of course, there was a significantly less number of incoming aerial targets past night. 148 was intercepted. I guess 160, 170 drones were launched, up to 200 maybe, because unfortunately there are reports that some of the drones did actually manage to bypass air defense forces and struck, for example, oil refinery in the Krasnodar Krai, Afipsky oil refinery. Also, reports are that in Rostov region, Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery was struck, and well, officials confirmed this information. A Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery in the Rostov region was damaged in our night attack by Kiev regime's forces, by NATO attack. Let's be direct and real here. Without NATO involvement, Kiev regime could not be able to pull off any of it, obviously. So it is a NATO attack and attack of NATO member states. And this oil refinery received some significant damage and suspended operations. Information is coming from a regional governor, Yuri Slusar. So unfortunately, certain percentage of these drones are managing to bypass air defenses and cause tragedies throughout the Russia, kill civilians, injured civilians, and their civilian infrastructure is also damaged and destroyed. Today, we also have reports that one person was killed and 131 injured in a fire at the Amur mining and chemical uh, plant. So one person died and over 100 were injured in a fire at the Amur gas chemical complex. Alexei Kuznetsov, assistant to the head of the Ministry of Health, told RIA Novosti. According to operational data, 131 people were injured, to be more precise, in this incident at their industrial facility in Amur region. And as you can see, dear friends, there are no claims made, at least as of now, that this was a sabotage or a drone strike or something like that. But of course, speculations are circulating out there that maybe this tragedy also occurred due to terrorist activity of UK, a British ruling class, British intelligence service and militaries, US ruling class intelligence and militaries, and their Ukrainian proxies. Although officially, as of now, no claims were made that NATO countries and the Ukrainian proxies were involved. But I think that is very much possibility. That is very much a possibility. Same time, probably you noticed there that there were no reports today, at least, about strikes on the Wildberries warehouses or Ozone warehouses or warehouses of other Russian e-commerce companies. Lately, British terrorists, British ruling class, that is, and British secret services, British militaries that are leading the charge in this terror campaign that West is waging against Russian people. They switch from Wildberries on Ozone, right? So they are now targeting Ozone warehouses, maybe because majority, if not all, major logistical centers of Wildberries already being destroyed. And in the past several days, 4 or 5 Ozone e-commerce companies' warehouses were struck and damaged, in some cases completely obliterated by this terrorist activity. And there was no attacks past night. You might wonder what's going on. Did the Western ruling class had the change of mind and they are no longer willing to attack purely civilian infrastructure? Answer is no. Probably they launch drones to strike e-commerce companies, civilian infrastructure, right? But those drones were intercepted. That's the reason why we have no reports about attacks either on Whiteberries or Ozone or something like that, right? And to make sure that Western ruling class is very much focused on a prolonged continuation of this terror campaign against Russian people, I can give you a statement of Finnish President Stubb, who is among other scumbags, who is among other filth, is also in Kiev now, Western filth, right? A human scum, basically. And by the way, I don't really see them as a humans. Sorry, but I refuse to call them a humans. Western elites are rabid animals and should be exterminated. That's my take. You know it. I have no mercy towards them. I hope they will all be neutralized one day. They don't deserve any better, right? And this human scum, this filth Stab, went to make statement that, well, these terrorist attacks, this terror campaign against Russian civilians had to continue. That's where they stand. And let me remind you, dear friends, that this Stab is like favorite boy, isn't it, of the globalists. He is not a random person. He is a favorite boy or favorite prostitute of the globalists. And after they will use him in Finland, they will appoint him somewhere in Brussels. Just mark my word. Mark my word. Stubb gonna become one of the high-ranking officials in Brussels, in EU. It's just a matter of time, by the way. So he is a favorite boy or favorite prostitute of globalists, and when he says something, that's what globalists are saying, basically, right? Actual Western ruling class, that is. And let me give you a video in which Stubb is quite clear where globalists stand and where globalist assets, globalist puppets stand when it comes to this terror campaign that they are waging against Russian people. Just listen to it.
We're in a much better place than we were. I think there are three things we need to do in order to end this war. One is to give military and financial support to Ukraine to increase its capacity for deep strikes, whether with missiles or with drones. And the reason for this is very simple. It increases the cost and the price of the war for Russia. And we can see that now in the sense that 65% of the Russian population wants to end this war. And, hitting logistics centers like Wildberries increases it with an additional 10%. So if your question is, do I think this is sensible military strategy from Ukraine? My answer is yes, it certainly is.
You see, this scumbag, by the way, is publicly, without any shame, is saying that terror campaign against Russian people is justified. That's what their globalist position is, right? And the position of all their terrorist regimes out there in Europe and in the Western world that are controlled by globalists. That's with whom we are dealing, dear friends. And because that's their nature of these scumbags that grab the power in the Western world, I refuse to call them humans, and I refuse to see them as humans. These are rabid animals that should not be tolerated, existence of which should not be tolerated, right? As actual humans don't tolerate existence of rabid dogs, for example, to run around freely, right? What happens to rabid dogs? You know what happens, right? They are put to sleep. That's what should be done to Western elites, Western aristocracies, first and foremost, European aristocracies, obviously that is. And everybody that one way or another related to Western aristocracy, Western ruling class, their puppets, their assets, their proxies, and so on. And well, if we've been in a totally real, by the way, or brutally real, then let's be honest, man. Russia definitely can eliminate those rabid animals that are in charge of a collective West, and that by doing so, Russia will do a great deal of help to Western societies that are basically hostages of these animals. Am I correct, Badu? Am I correct? Major enemy of Italian people is Italian government. Major enemy, or most brutal enemy that German people are facing is German government. Same goes for UK. Same goes for any other country, you name it, Badu. Existential threat for European societies are coming from their own so-called governments that are controlled by globalists, right? This is just true, 100% true, Badu. But Western societies are unable, man. Majority of Western societies being brainwashed just too freaking much, right? They are unable to understand this. And they would not be able to understand this until it's too late. But that's the face of the Western elites, right? That's the face of the Western elites. Stubborn, without shame, that represents globalists, without shame, openly, publicly brags about conducting terror campaign against Russian people, targeting civilian infrastructure, killing civilians, because that's what happens when you are targeting civilian infrastructure. That's what they are. And when it comes to this war that Western elites are waging against Russian people, you know, in previous updates, I said that this new so-called prime minister of UK, Burnham, promised Kiev regime transfer of classified technology to mass produce Storm Shadow missiles. Earlier, French President Macron said that France will transfer to Kiev regime classified technology to produce Scalp-EG missiles, right? This is a French-British cruise missile, by the way. In UK, it's called Storm Shadow. In France, Scalp-EG. It's the same missile, basically, that shares same components, right? So approval of both countries are needed to transfer technology of this missile to any third party. Although, of course, this is a shame that France and UK are engaged. They're not going to transfer to Kiev regime nothing, isn't it? They're going to produce, they're going to mass produce these missiles, then stick a label on it, made in Ukraine. And because they are putting this show up front of whole world, they will say, no, well, this was not our missile that struck school somewhere in a Russian city and killed her. God forbid, but it might happen, you know. These missiles will be used against schools, and dozens of people will be casualties, if not hundreds. Or high-rise apartment building might be struck with hundreds of casualties, right? God knows what else they might target, by the way. These are genocidal maniacs, right? And London and Paris will say it's not them. It's not them. They transfer technology to Kiev regime, right? And it's Ukraine that is producing these missiles, and they are responsible, and only them. That's what is going on, by the way. That's why these past several days there was this big noise around the subject of transferring technology to produce Storm Shadows in Ukraine. There's going to be no Storm Shadow or Scalp-EG production in Ukraine. They will mass produce these missiles in France and UK, put the label made in Ukraine, and then will use these missiles also in a mass alongside flamingos and whatever else they are producing, right, for these purposes, to strike on the Russian people and continue this terror campaign against Russian people. That's what is going on. And it is unfortunate that very few people, even in alternative media, are explaining to the community what the hell is going on. And therefore, some people actually believe that Kiev regime is capable of producing freaking Storm Shadows now, right? Or flamingos or anything. They cannot produce freaking, I don't know, man, pen, right? They cannot produce pen, by the way. How are they going to produce Storm Shadows? But because no one is explaining to the public what's going on, and people are believing on all sorts of garbage, right? So there is a full-scale preparations, by the way, full-scale preparations inside of Western ruling class to continue this war against Russian people, and at some point to launch actual direct open war also, right, from Europe against Russia. There is a constant maneuvers, military exercises on the border with the Russian regions in Baltics, on the border with Finland, also Poland is actively used by globalists. Poland is, of course, British proxy, so why would not they use Poland? And Polish defense minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz is bragging about deploying 28 South Korean K2 tanks now near Russia's Kaliningrad region. And it's not just the tanks, obviously, there is a massive contingent of Polish troops and also troops from other NATO member states that are stationed right now around the Kaliningrad region of the Russian Federation, which is encircled, by the way, by these hostile entities. On one side is Poland, on the other side Lithuania, and well, on the west it's Baltic Sea, right? That NATO countries are trying basically hard to transform into their internal lake and deny Russia access to it. So clearly, massive preparations are underway to launch a military operation. And the only question I have right now to our leadership, Russian leadership, is why are we giving them time? Right? We know they're going to attack. They are already attacking us. They are already waging war against our people. And soon they're going to launch open attack on us. So why are we giving them time? Why would not we take some preemptive steps? Why would not we be proactive and eliminate these points of concentration of NATO forces all over, throughout the Euro, right? Especially in Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, Norway, Sweden, right? Romania, Bulgaria. Why would not Germany? Why would not we eliminate points of concentration of military assets of NATO countries, hostile countries, and enemies of Russia before they launch attack? That's the only question I have, really. But somehow it so happens that policies of the Russian president is always coincides with the best interests of the Western ruling class. I'm not saying that the Russian president is working for Western ruling class. Let's be clear on that. I'm not saying that Russian president is a Western asset. Of course not. Of course, by the way, I'm not suicidal, right? Let me say it this way. But interestingly enough, it so happened that policies of the Russian president perfectly coincides with the best interests of the Western elites. It's a random development, obviously, it just happens randomly, but still strange, isn't it? Strange, to say the least. And one day, in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, maybe we will have a better knowledge and better understanding why that was, right? When some investigations will be conducted and more information will be released to public, right? But right now we are where we are. So let me continue with some other news, right? So Poland is deploying a lot of assets on the border, and you might ask what NATO countries, European NATO countries, for example, might use as a reasoning to launch a war against Russia, open war. And well, I mean, they can come up with anything. They can literally make their stuff up, and that is that. For example, remember just a few weeks ago there was a situation in Leipzig airport in Germany when, interestingly, drones were found right next to Ukrainian AN-124 transport plane. German media and then Western media even claimed that, well, one of the drones, FPV drones, armed with the explosive material, even struck this AN Antonov plane, right? And just didn't explode. How lucky those Antonov crew members are, isn't it? So, I mean, yeah, such a random developments. And And you know, by the way, who was blamed for that, isn't it? You know who was blamed in Western propaganda? Russia, obviously. But it was the Russian secret services that conducted a special op, right, to destroy this Antonov plane. But it so happened that somehow Russian secret services are not capable of equipping drone with the proper freaking explosives so that it will actually detonate once hits something. No, 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 no. Right? On one hand, Russian, according to Western propaganda, Russian secret services are so freaking scary and goodness me, man, terrifying. On the other hand, they are somehow unable to equip drone with the freaking proper explosives. It does not adapt, right? But anyways, of course, that was a false flag operation, by the way, conducted by Kiev regime's so-called secret services and British freaking secret services. Germans were involved, most likely also, right, to then direct this so-called investigation. And Merz, German Chancellor Merz, made a claim, according to Bild, German propaganda outlet, that they know what was going on in Leipzig airport. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz stated that the German government has evidence pointing to their possible perpetrators of their attempted drone attack on Leipzig airport. This was reported by newspaper Bild, citing members of their CDU party presidium. And you guess who they're gonna blame, dear friends? Do we have to even guess at this point? They're gonna blame Russia, of course. Of course, they're gonna blame Russia, these scumbags, man, right? So they can come up with such stories anytime, any day they want, right? They will made up stuff. In this particular case, according to reports, at least they spent time to come up with this freaking drone, put some garbage on it, right? That will imitate explosive or something. In case of Leipzig airport, at least they invested some time in this false flag operation. But any other day, they might just freaking made up the story that 100 Russian drones targeted Hamburg, for example. Hamburg, right? And there is 10,000 casualties now in Hamburg. 20,000 died out of 10,000 casualties, and another 150 million Germans have been taken prisoner by those drone operators that jump out of these FPV drones. They can come up with that scale of bullshit, and German public will, of course, believe in that, right? Majority, because how else, man? And majority of others in the Western world will believe in that freaking nonsense too. That's where we are. So they can come up with any story anytime and then launch attacks on Russia openly whenever they want. And that's it. Meanwhile, Russian president signed a decree on critical infrastructure security measures, according to RIA Novosti. So Vladimir Putin signed a decree on measures to ensure the security of a critical infrastructure due to growing threat during special military operation. According to document, the following objects are included in this list: fuel and energy complex, industry facilities, communication facilities, public utilities, transport and logistics infrastructure, including transport and logistics complexes, energy, including nuclear energy, life support infrastructure, critically important and potentially dangerous objects, chemical plants, I guess, that kind of stuff. Others that are of particular importance for ensuring security, economic stability of Russia, and the life of their population in the event of inadequate provision of their security by those responsible for this. The government, upon their instructions of their president, will be able to impose a temporary management over them. And well, you know what? Of course, it is good that Putin is paying some attention to this to these long-range attacks that Western ruling class is waging against Russian people. And I guess he was informed, at least on some level, about scale of damage that is done to Russia. And that's why I guess he come up with this decree. Now, not in like months ago, not 5 months ago, not like a year ago or 4 years ago, but now. Of course, you might ask, for God's sake, man, how this is even possible? Why he is coming up with this decree now, not before? I don't know. Maybe he didn't know what was going on. You know, I mean, I just don't know how else I can explain this. You know, so level of I don't know how well Putin is informed, by the way, right? Every now and then he does make statements that are not really factually accurate, to say the least. So therefore, I have questions about his level of his knowledge of objective information that is actually happening. Because that's the only way I can explain certain his statements and certain his moves, right? Steps. But anyways, yeah, he come up with this decision that well, strategical infrastructure has to be protected more. Okay, by the way. I mean, this is so basic, such a basics, by the way. I mean, is decree is necessary now to do some basic stuff? Okay, okay. And well, maybe one of the reason why all the necessary steps have not been taken in 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, and even this year is that, well, due to tremendous level of corruption that Russia is facing and struggling with, on many positions, high-ranking positions included, only scumbags are allowed. Is that could be their reasoning, that only scumbags, traitors, disgusting freaking animals are allowed to be on a position of decision making on many, and not all, but many positions on regional and federal scale, federal level. And those scumbags have no freaking idea what to do. Or those animals are working for enemy. Is that could be the case, that these corrupt animals are working for the enemy, or are just that stupid in some cases that just don't know what to do, and are sabotaging Russia from within, therefore, right? Even without realizing it. Some are sabotaging intentionally because they actually work for Western secret services, and others are just that stupid that don't know what is necessary, and due to their stupidity are sabotaging Russia. Could that be the case? I think yes. This is exactly the case, right? And I am not just talking about decision-making positions or bureaucracy. I am also talking about economical field, especially field that is closely related with the state institutions in terms of, combined some operations, combined production of anything, or that kind of stuff. And you know why am I saying so? Because not the first time there is a scandal here in Russia, by the way, now that head of yet another company was detained due to corruption charges, right? And this company received a lot of money and supposed to produce drones. During the wartime, by the way, Russia is being sabotaged even in a military industrial field by these scumbags, traitors. That's what they are, traitors, man. Correct? That's why I'm saying all the corrupt creatures are traitors. They should be treated as traitors. Let me give you details. The CEO of Tula Drone Research and Production Center, Yevgeny Grigoriev, has been arrested in Tula, according to News Tula publication. Arrest related to Grigoriev's professional activity took place on August 14th, and the court has ordered his pre-trial detention for 2 months. The charges against him include large-scale fraud, Article 4, Part 159 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation. Large-scale fraud in a military-industrial complex. Tula Drones. He was a CEO of Tula Drones, so you can imagine what this company should produce, right? As a reminder, in 2025, at the meeting on the development of the Research and the Production Center for Unmanned Aviation Systems, Tula Drone, Governor Dmitry Milyaev announced that over 1 billion rubles had been allocated to the creation of this center, with approximately 700 million rubles coming from the federal budget. 700 million rubles from the federal budget. And this creature is accused of large-scale fraud. I will question everybody in that freaking region, man. Everybody, right? From a governor who announced transfer of these massive sums to his deputies, to deputies of his deputies. Everybody should be questioned. And whoever is guilty, man, forever should be sent in taiga to warm up the air. You see what's going on, dear friends. You see what corruption does to the country, even when country is involved in a war. Entire collective West is waging war against Russian people, by the way. And during these war times, there are freaking scumbags in a local level, on federal level, and also in different industries that are using the situation to enrich themselves, right? To become a filthy rich. While sacrificing basically lives of thousands, potentially tens of thousands of Russian citizens. That's what is happening, and that's what corruption does to country and their society. And maybe because of the corruption, Putin did not come up with this decree, if decree was even necessary in 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. Because decree is about basics, right? Is our state system is that inadequate that authorities cannot come up with some basic decisions on their own? It has to be a president that will come up with a freaking decree. This is not normal, isn't it? This is just not freaking normal. Meanwhile, it's not just Russia that has to protect its strategical infrastructure because of this terrorist activity of the UK, US, and other NATO member states. Kazakhstan has to protect its strategical infrastructure too, man, and big time. Because, by the way, the Caspian Pipeline Consortium was targeted numerous times by British terrorists, by British intelligence services, British militaries, and the Ukrainian proxies, with assistance of US, obviously, right? All these attacks are conducted with assistance of US because they need American intelligence, right? And so CPC was targeted many times. CPC transports Kazakhstani oil. That's the priority of the CPC. This is Kazakhstani business, right? Formally, at least, although there are many shareholders in the company, including US majors in energy sector. But nevertheless, when it comes to geopolitics, neither London, neither Washington cares about some peanuts, right? And of course, these energy majors and stuff, these are peanuts, by the way, for them, right? It's not serious. They have much bigger goals. And that's why US was engaged in these attacks on CPC, right? That was harming American majors in energy, Chevron, for example, ExxonMobil, and so on. But anyways, recently London, through their Ukrainian proxies, said that they wouldn't attack CPC infrastructure, including terminal in Novorossiysk, but they did attack. Several days ago, they did still attack CPC. And also, due to these long-range attacks on Russian energy sector, friends, there is energy shortages, right? That Russia is facing, especially when it comes to gasoline. With diesel, situation is okay, but when it comes to gasoline, there is a shortages, even in Moscow, right? You can move around on a car, you will find gas stations that have no gasoline that you prefer, right? 95, for example, 95. There might be some other low quality gasoline on the station, or they might be none, right? So there is a gasoline shortages in the country, right? Due to these long range attacks that collective West is orchestrating against Russian energy infrastructure, Russian oil refinery, storage facilities, and so on. And obviously, Russian businesses, Russian government, that has to do something, isn't it? After all, well, they come up with some plans, some alternative logistical lines, supply lines, and so on. And Russia started importing a lot of gasoline. And one of the countries that are exporting their gasoline directly or indirectly to Russia is, of course, Kazakhstan. Belarus on one side and Kazakhstan on other side, right? And it so happened, by the way, that Western ruling class is not happy, very not happy that either Belarus or Kazakhstan are assisting Russian people, while yet again, directly or indirectly, transferring gasoline to Russia, right? And you guess what happened in Kazakhstan? Largest oil refinery suddenly caught fire. Unbelievable, man. Just unpicking believable, right? So yes, Kazakhstan's largest oil refinery suddenly caught fire. The fire occurred at the Kazakhstan's largest refinery located near the city of Atarau. Previously, it was reported that Kazakhstan would be accepting Russian oil for processing, and the finished fuel would be sent back to Russia. And I guess, well, for the time being, these plans will not work. Let's see how long it will take for Kazakhstani side to repair this oil refinery. But once they will repair it, I have a feeling that something going to happen to it again. And maybe some other oil refineries will end up on fire too, right? Suddenly, maybe aliens from Andromeda galaxy will came in and will say, you know what, you are polluting atmosphere, Kazakhstani oil refinery. We're gonna take you out now, right? For good of humanity. Maybe that's what happened with this largest oil refinery in Kazakhstan, huh? That suddenly caught fire. Or maybe British Secret Services help this oil refinery to get destroyed. You tell me, dear friends. But I think aliens from Andromeda galaxy have nothing to do with it. But British intelligence services definitely are involved, and the Ukrainian proxies, for plausible deniability sake. US is involved too, obviously, because whenever MI6 does terrorist activity, CIA knows about it, right? Russia House in CIA is well informed about every freaking move that MI6 does against Russia. Literally every move. So they are involved too. Therefore, and assisting with intelligence and probably with some assets too on the ground. And it is also interesting that very same Kazakhstan, by the way, is forced now to reduce its oil production plan due to Ukrainian/NATO or UK-US attacks on Caspian Pipeline Consortium that, as I already said, primarily transfers Kazakhstani oil from Kazakhstani territory to Russia into Novorossiysk oil terminal that CPC has, right? But because of this tremendous number of attacks, Astana has to downgrade their oil production. So Kazakhstan has reduced its oil production plan for 2026 due to losses associated with the Ukrainian military strikes on the Caspian Pipeline Consortium infrastructure, according to Energy Minister of Kazakhstan, Yerlan Akhenshchenov. Whatever. We plan to produce 98 million tons. The current adjusted plan is 96 million. Losses from the attacks on CPC will amount to 3.5 million, he said at their government briefing in Astana. And before end of this year, there still is time, by the way, right, to further reduce appetite when it comes to, or ambitions when it comes to oil production, because they have to sell this oil, right, somehow. And if Astana will not obey orders from London and Washington, well, these kind of situations, when Kazakhstani oil refineries are on fire suddenly, when CPC infrastructure is struck suddenly, when oil tankers that are carrying Kazakhstani oil are struck suddenly, will only continue to increase, right? So you see, by the way, Western ruling class is using terror, not just against Russia, but against Kazakhstan too. And I'm afraid Western ruling class is quite successful when it comes to forcing Kazakhstani ruling class and security services into submission, because there was not a single instance that is known to public when Kazakhstani law enforcement agencies, security services neutralized either drone assembly lines that UK, US, and the Ukrainian proxies build on the Kazakhstani territory to launch drones to strike deep into Russia. Neither there was any instance when explosive materials were seized, right, that are used in those drones that are attacking Russian territory from Kazakhstan. None of it was done. But I guess Astana is not feeling comfortable, right? I guess Astana is making some moves, complaining maybe too much to London that they have to do something, right, because Moscow is not happy with these constant drone attacks on the eastern regions of the Russian Federation from Kazakhstani soil. And well, London does not care, obviously, right? London operates only way it knows: blackmail and the terror. That's it, right? And they don't. The British ruling class does not give a damn how uncomfortable the situation for Kazakhstani ruling elites are, right, or the Kazakhstan secret services. Why should London care about that? Historically speaking, by the way, British elites in the past 3 to 5 centuries killed. If you actually spend time and go through historical materials, you will find out that British ruling class, British aristocracy in past 3 to 5 centuries killed 10 times more people than Nazi Germany did during the Second World War. But somehow attitude towards British ruling class is much different than attitude towards Nazi Germany. And Nazi Germany, of course, deserved all their negativity, obviously, right? But how come that British ruling class is not being treated in the same way? Because they deserve even harsher attitude, right? Because of all the terror that they spread throughout the world. This matrix is broken, man. I'm telling you. This freaking matrix is broken. And I have a lot more interesting news for you, dear friends. Sir, don't go anywhere. I just want to highlight, if I may, that this media project, my channels, by the way, are completely subscriber funded, as independent as one might be, right? Because I'm only able to make these programs for you, the community, because of your support, right? As long as I have your support, that allows me to stay full time on this project. I'll continue to do so, although it is very, very difficult, dear friends. I think every freaking day that if I go if I work 12 hours for delivery, man, I will make probably twice more a month than I have income through this project. But I'm extremely grateful, dear friends, extremely grateful for this unique opportunity and to all the members of our community that are supporting me through donations, through subscriptions on my PayPal, on my Patreon and their Boosty pages. By the way, it's a, it's like a dream come true, really, right? It's like a dream come true. By the way, I grew up in the journalism, and I'm able to work in this field, be citizen journalist right now, right, and uh, come up with the programs for our community. So I'm truly grateful, dear friends, sir, to you. Don't take nothing for granted. And so, thank you, everybody who ever supported and continues to support. And in case new members are watching, I will just remind them that in order in order this project to be in a safe place, and in order me to have a little bit of peace of mind, by the way, right, in terms of financial security, let's say, uh, our community on Patreon needs to double. And if you can support her on a monthly basis or with a little bit, please consider to do so. You can subscribe to my Patreon, choose your level of supporter. It starts from $5 a month, by the way, right? You can choose your level of support, and you can do this on a Boosty too, if for whatever reason you don't like Patreon. So there is a Patreon page of mine. There is unfortunately more than 2 weeks or 3 weeks we did not have their new member on Patreon. Recently, one big member left her, and I mean, there was only two members for quite a while that were supporting my work with their $50 a month, and one just left her recently. So I mean, minus $50 is big hit, by the way, for this project, obviously. Um, so yes, it is 132 members now in our Patreon community and 12 members on the Boost team. And yeah, unless our community doubles, by the way, this project is gonna be in question constantly, and I'm not gonna have no freaking peace of mind, man. And this constant stress, month after month after month after month, is of course not easy, not easy. But anyways, many thanks to everybody. Yet again, many thanks to everybody who ever supported and continues to support and keeps me in this field of news and political commentary, and keeps this project of mine alive. Once again, if you decide that you want to support, you can do it through with subscription to my Patreon page or page on Boosty, or you can use PayPal, dear friends, for a donation. And during the live streams, of course, you can use a super chat feature on the Rumble, as Wayward did. I already made the screenshots of the super chats from Wayward, and I will react on this. And if there will be any other super chats from other members of the community, I will react on it, of course, straight away uh, after the news segment, right? Uh, so okay, once again, thank you all, dear friends, for support. And let's continue with the news. And as I said, there is a lot more news, interesting, important news, I think, to discuss. For example, British Times, come up with their article that Zelensky sets out a peace proposal to end the war. On Tuesday, Times writes, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov might meet with Archbishop Paul Richard Gallagher and discuss their terms of a new plan for a peaceful resolution to Ukrainian conflict. According to newspaper, Zelensky has already presented his proposal. It involves three key steps: both sides ceasefire, withdraw troops from their front line, and the creation of the buffer zone. And then, according to these dreams that Western ruling class has, they're going to deploy their forces, right? NATO forces. They might call it peacekeepers or whatever, right? Then they want to deploy these forces. And, well, you know what? I already shared information about this Zelensky's latest so-called proposal, which includes creation of economical zone in this buffer zone, something like that. And when it comes to visit of representative of Vatican, this Archbishop Paul Richard, he arrived actually. He arrived in Russia. And Lavrov, foreign minister of the Russian Federation, actually had a meeting. So Russian earlier TASS reported that Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will hold the talks on Tuesday, today, with Archbishop Paul Richard Gallagher, the Holy See's Secretary for Relations with the States and international organizations, foreign minister basically of Vatican, right? And Vatican, by the way, let's make no mistake, I'm not talking about Catholic Church, I'm talking about Vatican as a city-state. Vatican is the enemy of Orthodox Christianity, right? Let's be clear on that. Vatican is my enemy, an enemy of all Orthodox Christians and all Orthodox Christianity. Always was enemy, always will be enemy, right? Just let's be clear on that. I'm talking about this state entity. I'm not talking about Catholics, right? I don't see Catholics to be my enemies necessarily, right? I have relatives, by the way, Catholics, so obviously I don't see them as enemies. But when it comes to Vatican, that's a whole different story. Vatican is, of course, one of their major forces when it comes to globalist club. May not be as powerful as a British ruling class for now, but definitely one of the most powerful groups in this globalist club, isn't it? So therefore, it is sad. It is sad that Russian leadership is that open to have meetings with these enemies of Russian people, enemies of Orthodox Christians, not just Russian Orthodox Christians, but all Orthodox Christians, by the way. And that's what Vatican is. But yeah, Lavrov nevertheless had a meeting with this scumbag, right? So-called the foreign minister of Vatican, and he went to make some statements. Lavrov, that is, right? Let me give you some details on that. And you're gonna ask, maybe some members will ask her, why on earth this Vatican bureaucrat went to Moscow? Well, he bring ultimatum. He bring the ultimatum. I said Vatican is one of the most powerful groups in among globalists, right? In the globalist club. So Vatican was chosen to deliver ultimatum this time around. Remember, like months or 2 months ago, ambassadors of France, UK, and Germany delivered the ultimatum to Russian foreign ministry, to Russia basically. They went to foreign ministry and delivered that ultimatum from London, Paris, and Berlin. Moscow did not really react there in any significant way. And they decided that, well, they're going to use now Vatican to deliver ultimatum again. Maybe changed one, right? Maybe they made some changes in this ultimatum, but that's what is going on. This representative of Vatican, this scumbag, delivered their ultimatum from globalists. Let's make no mistake on that. And somehow, by the way, Lavrov, foreign minister of Russia, come up with this statement that Russia is grateful to the Vatican for its balanced position on Ukraine. Goodness me, man. Really? Are we now grateful to our enemies? Really? I'm not. I'm not grateful. I'm not thankful to Vatican for nothing. I don't like Vatican. I see Vatican as my enemy, man. What Lavrov is talking about? Is he even Orthodox Christian after all? I don't know. Maybe he's a Gregorian, by the way. I mean, he has roots in Armenia, right? He's from Georgia. He has roots in Georgia too, but his ancestors were Armenians, right? Ethnically. So maybe he's a Gregorian Christian. I don't know. It's not about that, by the way. I mean, it's about what attitude, man. This is not normal. This is not normal when Russian foreign minister is embracing freaking enemies of ours, right? What the hell, man? What are you doing? This is not a diplomacy no more, man. Don't meet with them. Yes, once you meet, you're gonna use diplomatic language, okay, but be strict in your language too, or don't meet those creatures, right? So that you would not force yourself to end up in a situation when you have to use this freaking diplomatic language. Anyways, let me give you quotes here. We thanked Russia is grateful to Vatican for its balanced position on the Ukrainian crisis. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated, yeah, what disgrace. We thanked our colleagues for their balanced position on the situation in and around Ukraine and outlined Russia's principal approaches to resolving the Ukrainian crisis by addressing its root causes, Lavrov said at the press conference following talks with the Paul Richard Gallagher scumbag animal, right? So-called foreign minister of Vatican. Then this individual, foreign minister, went to say Russia hopes the Vatican will notice actions that Kiev regime is committing against Orthodox Christianity in Ukraine. So Russia expects the Vatican to pay attention to actions against the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church in its contacts with the Ukraine, Lavrov says. We expect that their contacts, that in their contacts with the Ukrainian side, our Vatican colleagues will pay attention to these issues, the ban on Russian language, for example, as well as the actions of a Kiev regime, which is legislatively pursuing the destruction of the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Lavrov told the reporters following talks with this Vatican foreign minister, foreign service header, Richard Gallagher. So what's going on, dear friends? Do you understand? Vatican is behind divide that Ukraine has faced, or citizens of Ukraine has faced when it comes to Orthodox Christianity. Vatican is the force that was pushing together with the CIA and MI6, by the way, this rascal to happen, this split to happen in Ukraine, in Orthodox Christianity. And Lavrov is telling Vatican to pay more attention to crimes that the regime is committing against Orthodox Christians and canonical Orthodox Christian Church. What's going on, man? Honestly, what the hell is going on? This is embarrassing. This is just freaking embarrassing, man. Right? Vatican is guilty. Vatican did it, man, to Orthodox Christianity in Ukraine, together with the US and UK and their secret services. And you are telling Vatican representative to behave, to criticize Kiev regime for doing exactly what Vatican told them to do? No, man, this cannot be freaking real, huh? But it is, isn't it? I mean, that's where we are, man. That's how fucked up this world is, really. It's just too crazy, man. It's just too crazy, you know? These filthy games, man, these filthy bloody games that are taking place among so-called global leaders or world leaders is just too freaking disgusting. Gallagher, on his part, this creature, and yet again, dear friends, let's make no mistake, I have no issue with the Catholics, right? I'm talking about Vatican as a terrorist entity. as a city-state or terrorist entity. That's what Vatican is, right? So, representative of Vatican terrorists, Gallagher, stated that he had found a common ground with Russia. Really? You have no freaking idea about Russia. You don't know nothing about Russia. So shut the fuck up, bitch. Right? Gallagher. That's first and foremost. And then, and let's not mix Russian leaderships with Russia. You know, this leadership comes and goes, right? Russia stays. And there is difference there, massive difference. And just because Western ruling class or the globalists, including Vatican terrorists, have find there some common ground with the Russian elites, or some of them, does not mean that they find common ground with Russia, man. It's not the same, right? So this Vatican foreign minister, Paul Richards Gallagher, stated that common ground was found on a number of issues during the talks with the Russian foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, despite the significant differences that remain in our assessment of various issues. So he's quite direct, right? Lavrov was very diplomatic, you see. This Gallagher bitch says straight away that, we have differences. We have different take on Ukraine. Lavrov said, thank you, Vatican, for reasonable takes. And Gallagher says, no. We are pro-Ukrainian, right? We have differences. And Ukraine was the main topic of discussion, right? So that's what his statement means. Despite the significant differences that remain in our assessment of various issues, some common ground was found. Okay, by the way, right? He delivered the ultimatum, by the way, this scumbag from Vatican. Delivered the ultimatum to Russian side, Russian leadership. Made it clear that Vatican is in full support of Ukrainian Nazis and the fascists, and that's why he says that they have differences with their Russian take or Russian interpretation on the situation, right? And there he will fuck off now. That's it, right? And somehow Russian foreign minister managed to be just this polite, man. This polite that, what was the words? What was the words, man? Russia is grateful to Vatican for its balanced position on Ukraine. Holy shit, man. Unbelievable. Just unfreaking believable, man. Right? But it is what it is, man. These old people that are in charge of country have to go on and have some freaking rest, right? They have to have freaking rest, man. They become in total freaking embarrassment. Don't put yourself in a position in which you might, due to your diplomatic position or status or whatever, have to be polite to your enemy. Don't be polite to your enemy, man. And Vatican is our enemy, period. And as I said, Vatican delivered this ultimatum, of course, from globalists, because Vatican is a major force in globalists, probably only second after British ruling class. I will argue that Vatican is even more powerful than French ruling class, right? So therefore, there's these three major groups, isn't it, among globalists, in globalist club, the three major groups: British ruling class, British aristocracy, and their proxies. And they have a lot of proxies throughout Europe and elsewhere. There is a Vatican, of course, powerful as hell, and the French ruling class. And I think Vatican is second. Anyways, ultimatum is delivered to Russia, and we know what this ultimatum is all about, isn't it? It's all temporary solutions. It's all about ceasefire. It's all about freezing the conflict. Under whatever pretext this cannot be presented to public, this is all about freezing the conflict on the current line of contact. That's what Western ruling class wants. Although, by the way, um, and also they want this like neutral zone, free economical zone, right? On which, well, Western ruling class has to have a control too. And on this matter, Peskov, press spokesman of the Russian president, says that uh, Moscow rejects the possibility of external control in Donbass, right? On DPR territories. He's talking about this northern western part where the regime still has its presence, right? This Slaviansk, Kramatorsk, Grushkovka fortified area, right? Basically, right, and little bit in Dobropolye direction. So according to Western plan, that territory should be demilitarized. Now, this area, by the way, this area from this red line and until Russian position should be demilitarized and transformed into free economic zone. Forces should be withdrawn, not just from this part, but also all along the front line and that kind of stuff. That's what West wants, right? For now, because they need break, man. They need break, right? They want to rearm, reorganize the Ukrainian proxies, right? They want break for themselves too, because this war is extremely expensive after all, right? They don't really have that much money to finance this war. That is not really going that well for the Western elites, right? Indefinitely. So they need break too. And they won't break for their Ukrainian proxies. Now, Peskov says that, it's not feasible. External governance of Donbass, as proposed by Ukraine, is impossible as the region is a part of Russia. Russian presidential press secretary Dmitry Peskov emphasized at the briefing. Okay, he spoke about Donbass. He didn't mention in the same context other parts of Russian Federation, new Russian regions that are not controlled by Russia as of now. For example, northern western part of Zaporozhye region, including Zaporozhye city itself, administrative center, and also Kherson. What about West Bank of Dnieper in the Kherson region? Or right bank? It's Russia, isn't it? Including Kherson city, administrative center. But Peskov says nothing about it. He just went to say that, Donbass cannot be under foreign control, this corner here. And you know what? When I was reading this stuff, I was trying to analyze the situation. What should we expect, by the way, right? What should we expect there? Western ruling class, of course, understands that Putin and his inner circle is a dream come true for them, right? Globalists, they know perfectly well that if, for whatever reason, Putin tomorrow resigns, that's going to be a dark day for the West, right? Because who knows, man, who's going to become the next Russian president, and if that next Russian president will be as tolerant or will also have a soft spotter for Western ruling class in a way as Putin does and his inner circle, right? And so, of course, it is in the best interest of the Western ruling class to help directly or indirectly, right? While pushing anti-Putin propaganda all over the West and all over the world, demonizing Putin, demonizing Russia. I think Western ruling class understands perfectly well that they need Putin in the power because it so happens year after year after year that Putin policies are well coincides with the best interests of the Western ruling class. This is, of course, as I already said, just random coincidence, right? I'm not at all saying that there is something else there to see. I mean, you can try, of course. It's up to you. Maybe you will see something there. But I'm not saying that there is something. If you find something, then okay. But what I'm saying is, yeah, that's an interesting situation, isn't it? When Putin's policies strengthens in many ways um, Western ruling class and their geopolitical agenda, right? Yet again, coincidence, but yeah, things happen, man. We are living in a crazy world. This matrix is broken. And I give you some examples on that matter. I mean, don't do those examples even needed, by the way, Ken? If you were a Russian president, if you were a Russian president, what would you do if these NATO countries were killing your citizens day in, day out and destroying infrastructure in your country, including strategical infrastructure, including nuclear threat, attacks on nuclear threat? Would you tolerate that? Really? You wouldn't. You just wouldn't, man. I wouldn't. No one would, right? But I mean, somehow Putin is different. Okay, he's different. So Western ruling class, of course, monitors the situation, despite all this Putin hate and that kind of propaganda in the West. Western elites understand, man. I mean, Putin's presidency is quite beneficial for the West, for the Western ruling class, and they also realizing that due to these constant attacks on Russian Federation and the restrained policy of the Putin, ratings of ruling elites, by the way, are crumbling. Actual ratings of ruling elites, despite all the propaganda that is works for Kremlin and the ruling party and ruling elites, their grasp on the minds of the people is weakening, right? Weakening significantly. And this is a threat. This is a threat for a Western ruling class because they would like to see, for example, transition of power from Putin to someone else who will also have a very same takes than Putin does, right? So that someone will be will push policies that will also coincide with the best interests of the Western ruling class. Correct? It's a pragmatic approach, by the way, like that. And in order to make sure that that's exactly what is going to happen, and whenever Putin decides that he had enough of everything and he is now going to rest, in order to make sure that Putin will succeed in a transition of power to someone who he will choose, rating of Putin and rating of his ruling party and rating of a ruling class itself cannot go down further than certain levels, right? Otherwise, it will be extremely difficult to pull off such a stuff. And now these ratings are dropping, but because no one on this planet, not just in Russia, but no one in this freaking planet understands what the hell is going on with this restraint policy and how this is even possible, right? And many people are asking questions. And so, to strengthen, if you were Western ruling class, what would you do, by the way, to indirectly assist, or somewhat directly even assist now to keep in power in Russia group that so happen that pursues the policies that is beneficial for you? What would you do in the current situation? You know what I would do? I would come up with a very stronger ultimatum, but then I will tell to my puppets in Ukraine, you know what? You're going to withdraw forces from Kramatorsk. Yeah, that's what I would tell. That you're going to withdraw forces from Kramatorsk, major stronghold of Kiev regime, or Slavyansk. Or maybe I will tell them, you know what, you're going to withdraw forces from entire part of a DPR that you still have your presence. That's what I would tell my Ukrainian proxies if I was a decision maker among globalists, because, and I will tell them to do this with the battles, right? Not just surrender and we are running away. No, 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 no. With the fight. But, you know, let's do organized withdrawal, let's say, right? so that Putin and his inner circle will have will read the situation as they just went in and defeated the enemy right there. Enemy didn't run, but it was defeated there, right? Because that picture will definitely create a ground uh, to to basically present the situation to public here in Russia as a major victory, absolutely major victory, right? When everybody was expecting that battles for Slavyansk and Kramatorsk will take forever, many months, maybe even years. No, you see, Putin made a speech that we're gonna do this and that, and then wow, Kiev regime's forces just scared to their death and run away. Great victory. I would do this, man. I would orchestrate that if I was a Western ruling class. You know? And by doing so, of course, I would strengthen tremendously, significantly, by the way, positions of this group that is in power in Russia. That so happened that pursues the policies that are beneficial for me, right? So I would like those people to stay in power, right? Because why not? I will continue demonize them and stuff, but if their policies are beneficial, then who cares, right? So therefore, dear friends, maybe Vatican delivered today some very stronger ultimatum, let's say, but same time, who knows, man? Maybe in a very short time from now, we will have some situation will develop on the battlefield in a DPR in such a way that before parliamentary elections, even in next 3 to 4 weeks, before 20th of September, either Slavyansk or Kramatorsk or Drushkovka maybe, or this one. I mean, Dabropoli and Drushkovka not gonna have much of an effect, right? Because people don't know these towns that much, majority that is. But Kramatorsk, Slavyansk is different, of course. Slavyansk has a specific meaning, right? Because when people rebel in the DPR in 2014, well, Slavyansk was basically epicenter of this rebellion, right? And these rebel forces were actually in control of Slavyansk for some time. They were unable to maintain control over the city and had to withdraw from there. Once Kiev regime deployed there, these Ukrainian Nazis and the fascists deployed significant forces, but they were in charge, right? So if Slavyansk is liberated in the next 2 to 3 weeks time, right? Of course, that will give tremendous boost to prestige and rating of Putin and his inner circle. Correct, to current ruling class here in Russia. That and again, it so happened randomly, obviously, that is extremely beneficial for the Western ruling class to stay in power. So yeah, that's what is going to happen, by the way. No matter the ultimatum that was delivered now, formally, at least, be ready to receive information that in next several weeks until parliamentary elections, Slavyansk is going to be liberated. Right? Kiev regime going to withdraw forces from Slavyansk. They will leave some troops to come up with some level of resistance, but major grouping of forces, major part of Slavyansk garnison will be withdrawn from this city. If my reading of the big picture is correct, and if Western ruling class actually has a thought process in a way that I just described, because if they do, it makes sense on their behalf to tell Kiev regime, you know what, leave a little group in Slavyansk, with your arrest, right? Or else. And no, you think what Kiev regime gonna do? Of course, they will obey orders, obviously, right? We will see, man. We will see, but I expect something major to happen there in next several weeks in and around Slaviansk, and then after that, who knows, man? If Slaviansk is liberated, then maybe propaganda can make from that such a story that maybe no one would even care about Kramatorsk no more. Uh, Not no one. This is not the right way to put it, but maybe people will put up with their situation if, let's say, Kramatorsk and the rest of their territory in this northeastern corner is being transferred into let's say uh, buffer zone or free economical zone or whatever the demands of the Western ruling classes in terms of their ultimate. So they will give a Putin victory in Slavyansk, big victory, and then some agreement might actually happen, and conflict will be frozen. That's what is going to happen, man. That's what is going to happen, I think. Right? We're going to find out in next several weeks, actually. There is many nuances, I guess, during these talks, negotiations, or whatever is going on out there, and processes might be derailed. But as of now, I think that's the direction that things are heading. Share your opinion. What you think? Do you believe that Slavyansk is going to be liberated by Russian forces in next 2 to 3 weeks' time? I think it's possible. Yet again, if my reading of the big picture is more or less accurate, it might not be there. You never know, right? So as I said, Peskov stated that there is no possibility of external control in Donbass. Yeah, okay, today he says this, tomorrow he might say something different, especially if Slavyansk is under Russian control. Also, RIA Novosti reports that, US didn't join the anti-Russian statement on Ukraine at the United Nations. Not the first time this is happening. 50 countries out of 193 voted in favor of anti-Russian statement on Ukraine in the UN. US did not vote against Russia, and you know why, isn't it? This is just a part of deception. This is part of deception. This forever game, man. Good cop, bad cop, right? US plays kind of good cop. Europe plays bad cop. It's all a part of freaking deception. It means we shouldn't be fooled by this nonsense. Of course, right? Same time, as a part of deception that US is engaged, or Western ruling class is engaged in regards to Russia. Well, interestingly, US military transport plane arrived in Vnukovo today, in Moscow, right? US C-17 Globemaster plane. That's how this plane looks, by the way. So reports are that US military transport Boeing C-17A Globemaster 3 arrived from Riga, Latvia, to Vnukovo, Moscow, according to data obtained by RIA Novosti. Well, everybody has this data, by the way. I published this information on my Telegram and Twitter X page, like, I don't know, 5 hours ago now. Anyways, the flight departed from the Latvian capital, Riga, at around 8:50 this morning and landed at the capital's airport here in Russia at around 10 a.m. According to flight history, this plane arrived in Riga on August 23rd, 2 days ago, basically, from Andrews Air Force Base near Washington, D.C. Donald Trump's presidential aircraft and those of other high-ranking officials fly from there also, right? So obviously, some high-ranking official has visited Moscow. Former U.S. Marine Robert Gilman, who was convicted of assaulting a law enforcement officer and released in Russia, was brought to their same base earlier in August. Okay, it does not matter. But when it comes to this particular landing of U.S. aircraft, well, Peskov says that he don't knows what's going on. Dmitry Peskov, press spokesman of the Russian president, said that he does not have information about U.S. military transport plane that landed at the Vnukovo airport. No, I don't have such information, he said, adding that no meeting with representatives of U.S. administration are planned in the Kremlin this week. Right, so Putin might not have no meeting with their U.S. representatives, but if Peskov does not know actually plane landed in Moscow and what's going on around this story, then well, that's too bad, isn't it? But if he knows and lies about it, then he is just too incompetent because he don't have to lie. He just don't have to lie. Say that this is you know, yes, something is happening, but he can't share the information with the public right now. Just say that yes, plane landed. There is certain developments that are taking place, but right now it's just too early to make statements about it. And because Russian president is not planning to meet anybody from U.S. administration this week, I'm not going to comment on it. Just say it, man. It's easy, right? You don't have to lie. Just say the truth. That yes, you know what's up, but you're not gonna say it because you just don't. It's not time yet. Or this plane's landing is related to some other institution, and let the other institution say what's up, right? It's not related to a president, so therefore you are not commenting on it. But to say no, I don't have such information, then why you are press spokesman of the president if you don't know? Everybody knows and you don't know. Yeah, okay. Anyways, dear friends, remember when I was reading this news, when I published this information early in the day, I was also thinking, what the hell? Who has came to Moscow? And you know what I remember? About a month ago or something, I was reporting in my programs that Kesh Patel, FBI director Kesh Patel, had plans to visit Russia, right? And well, that's my guess that maybe Kesh Patel arrived on board of this plane, FBI director. Maybe CIA director or deputy is also on board, maybe some representatives of the Pentagon, and maybe Sai's gonna talk about some stuff that are related to certain topics on which certain level of cooperation is necessary, even during the war times between major nuclear superpowers. Can that be the case? Maybe, right? But yeah, either way, we will find out, isn't it? Maybe not today or tomorrow, but we will find out. I think FBI representatives of FBI, CIA, possibly Pentagon have arrived on that plane there, and we'll have some meetings with their representatives of Russian FSB, maybe Russian Defense Ministry, Foreign Intelligence Service. Of course, we're not gonna know what they will discuss. Actually, will be classified. But yeah, that's what's up, right? Nothing extraordinary, really. Meanwhile, something extraordinary is happening in Ukraine, by the way, because a former, as far as I can tell, aide of U.S. President Donald Trump, Kat Kellogg, is advocating for a forceful mobilization of women in Ukraine. Quite interesting picture, isn't it? When on one side, Zelensky, about half year ago, claimed that Kyiv regime lost only 55,000 troops. Then, like months or 2 months ago, very same Zelensky claimed that Kyiv regime only lost 50,000 troops. So somehow, as more time has passed, less people, casualty numbers decreased. Officially declared casualty numbers decreased, right? So maybe they reanimate her 5,000 dead or something, right? But yes, that was, remember the story? Once Zelensky said they lost 55,000 KAA, and after several months, he said, recently, by the way, when he was in US, he said they lost 50,000. Of course, these numbers have nothing to do with their objective reality. We know that perfectly well, but just a level of idiocy on behalf of Western ruling class, Western propaganda, and the Ukrainian proxies. I just want to highlight that. At the same time, by the way, while Western world is pushing this narrative that Kyiv regime only lost 55,000 troops, and they are same time pushing narrative that Russian Federation lost 100 million troops, 150 million troops, 200 million troops. There is nobody left in Russia. We all die, right? Okay, that's the narrative that they are pushing. At the same time, somehow there is a constant talks in Ukraine about lowering mobilization age up to 18, right? So that everybody from 18 to 23, 25 will be forcefully mobilized. And Kat Kellogg is also pushing women to be forcefully mobilized. And nowadays, there is a massive gathering of these scumbags, right, from Western public figures and Western so-called elites in Kiev. They are celebrating something. I don't know what they're actually celebrating, but they celebrate something, Dependence Day or something like that. Anyways, Kellogg is among those people, and he went to give an interview to some propaganda channel of Kyiv regime, and he was quite direct that yes, women have to serve, women have to be mobilized, absolutely. He went to say that his daughter served in her army, so therefore, forget it. There is difference, isn't it? His daughter served in an army in some nice place, probably, right? Didn't really see combat, actual combat. Maybe his daughter was a drone operator and was killing civilians, right? Somewhere in Afghanistan or Iraq or. But citizens of Ukraine, men or women, they're going to end up in actual combat on the ground and most likely die. And this scumbag, while on one side pushes this narrative together with the rest of the Western elites and the propaganda, pushes this narrative that Kyiv regime only lost 50,000 troops. On the other side, pushes for women to be forcefully mobilized. So why are you going to mobilize women if you only lost 50,000 troops in a country of, as they say, 35, 38 million? Western propaganda, isn't it? They still continue to push this narrative that there is 38 million people in Ukraine. While in reality, it barely can be around 18, 20, out of which at least 5 to 8 million are pensioners. Some reports suggest 10 million pensioners are right now in Ukraine. I don't know. I don't have exact stats, but anyways, Kat Kellogg is pushing for women to be forcefully mobilized. And dear friends, you remember a couple of days ago, I shared with you information that there is many indicators on acute control territory that ground is being prepared to go for forceful mobilization of a woman. Also, there are discussions again in in Kiev regime's media, in the Kiev regime's media, in Ukraine about mobilization of the women, and also age to be lowered of the people, right? Age to be lowered of the people that are mobilized up to 18 years. And their disinformation alone indicates how devastating the situation for the regime is in terms of manpower. Also, I want to share with you a statement that Piskov again made in regards to topic of mobilization here in Russia, right? Believe it or not, but these topics are still discussed. Before I continue with that topic, let me just make a couple of screenshots, dear friends. Thank you, Nautilus, for your premium subscription gift card on Rumble. And many thanks to Wayward and also Scooby for super chats. I will, of course, react on all of this right after news segment. And so Piskov was asked again about mobilization here in Russia, and I don't know, like 10th time or 15th time, he went to say that such rumors originate among other sources from Ukrainian authorities and several Western media outlets. Piskov emphasized that these statements are aimed at stirring up public sentiment within Russia. And I have to disagree with Piskov on this matter. I believe, yes, sir, there might be 1%, 2%, maybe, I don't know, 3%, 5% max of society that are too sensitive, right? And might overreact on anything, really, including on the topic of mobilization. But vast majority of public, especially reservists, by the way, and I am a reservist too, right? So vast majority of public reservists have, I think, similar take as I do, right? But none of us want any wars, right? Or with anybody. We all want wars to end. We all love peace, of course. That goes obviously without even highlighting. But same time, we all realize that we have not just rights but also obligations before our societies and before our country that we are citizens of. And therefore, if need be to be mobilized, then that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go into whichever direction we've been sent, right, frontline or whatever, and we're going to do best we can to be as successful and as good reservists and militaries as we can. That's it, man. So I disagree with Piskov that this topic are going to generate some internal like disturbances in public. There is always a certain percentage of people in any society that are just extremely sensitive to anything, literally anything, right? So of course they will overreact on the mobilization if mobilization will be declared. Uh, like let's say, I don't know, tomorrow or day after, or after several weeks or months. Let's say if contacts between Western ruling class and Russian leadership totally failed or something. But to say that West is pushing this narrative to stir up public sentiment, yeah, I think this is exaggeration, man. Western ruling class, they're idiots. They think majority of Russian people gonna scare of mobilization because they don't know Russian people, they don't know Soviet people, they don't know mentality, they don't know nothing about it, right? So they will continue to push this narrative, but we should not pay too much attention to this, man, right? Also, Peskov went to say, of course, the regime is trying to ideologically destabilize the situation in our country. And all this is just disinformation deliberately spread in the information space. It is this disinformation, it is lies, yes, but don't say that this information gonna create some disturbances in the public. I don't know anybody, and I live here, man. I don't know anybody who scares mobilization. So how are we gonna destabilize the situation? Can you tell me? If you ask me, do I want to be mobilized and sent to the front line? I will say no, man, because I have no military experience, and therefore, yeah, I'll be given some training, obviously, right? As it always happens when mobilization is in place, but a lack of prior experience in military, of course, will brings down my chances to survive quite significantly. So therefore, of course, I don't want to be in a war, man. But yet again, I have not just rights but obligations. So if I'm mobilized, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna go in a recruitment freaking center, right? And get mobilized and try my best to learn as much as I can, by the way, during this training process, so that I will increase the chances of my survival. That's it. And I guess majority will say the same, right? No one wants to be in a freaking war, man. Who wants the war? I guess just some psychopaths that enjoy the war and stuff like that. But us ordinary people, especially ones that don't have a military experience, we don't want freaking war. I am at war right now. I'm on the front line of media war, right? Or information war. And I'm kind of risking, by the way, given the death threats that I'm receiving time to time. This is my front line. But when it comes to actual front line on the battlefield, I'll go through, man, if mobilized. It is what it is. And if I'm going to die, I'm going to die, man. Fuck it. I would not be happy about it, of course, but yeah, things happen. So Peskov is wrong if he thinks that with this topic of mobilization, Western ruling class will destabilize Russia or will have any chance to destabilize Russia. It's a nonsense, right? They might push any freaking narrative they want, but they don't know mindset of people, either here in Russia or in former Soviet Union. And that's why they are making major mistakes, man, regularly. Meanwhile, inside the Ukraine, there is a continuation of this conflict between US, UK, and EU assets, right? US and EU financed so-called anti-corruption institutions named NABU and SAP, went after Zelensky's inner circle again. A few days ago, I reported about the difference, and one of the individuals that they went after was Mudra, former head of Zelensky's office, and she is being detained. And today she was sentenced for a pre-detention for 60 days, basically, right? While investigation continues, if she pays 20 million hryvnias bail, then she will be released, probably. And of course, someone going to pay for her 20 million. So this was attack from EU and US on the British assets inside the Kiev regime, right? Because Zelensky is a British asset, and his inner circle also a British asset, right? But if you think, well, London is too weak now when it comes to control over their processes in Ukraine, then unfortunately this is not necessarily the case, because I remind you that London did manage to appoint their asset as a defense minister, Shmara or whatever their freaking name is of that animal. And they're also in a state rada, which is a parliament in Ukraine, so-called anti-corruption committee stated that, well, they have questions, by the way, for former Ukraine's defense minister Fyodorov, who is, of course, EU asset, EU's candidate to replace Zelensky. So you see, London is even going on offensive now, and they are actively targeting Fyodorov as a figure in the hands of EU, Paris and Brussels, basically European elites, right? And you can see, by the way, how different the media coverage is of this situation on the continental part in Europe, right? And in UK. In UK, it's all about protecting Zelensky. It's all about how it is not time for elections, for anything, right? It's all about Zelensky being this hero figure. In Europe, on the other side, well, coverage is much more critical, very critical in some cases, right? Especially in France and Germany, for example, because as I said, man, there is a war that is going on between a British ruling class and the European ruling class, and Europeans want to have European elites want to be taken seriously, man. That's what is going on, really. British ruling class is so much more powerful than this rest in a globalist club that all European elites are trying to do now, and that includes French aristocracy, French ruling class, is to just have a voice, because they know they're not going to be able to defeat their British ruling class now. They are just too freaking weak, man. But yet again, this infight continues. And London is now on offensive. I guess British ruling class did not like it all when their assets being targeted by Europeans, in some ways with the assistance of US ruling class. And well, they're going to go hard against Europeans now. They're not going to go after Americans, but they're going to go hard against Europeans and their assets in Ukraine. And they might actually went as far as to detain Fyodorov, this European candidate to replace Zelensky. They might detain freaking Fyodorov and totally destroy him. They might go for a character assassination on such a scale that Fyodorov will be just deleted from a media field. They can do it, man, and probably they will do it. Or they might actually go for physical assassination, because it looks like British ruling class is pissed off big time. And they are dangerous, man. Everyone should understand that British ruling class is the most dangerous force that there is out there. Most brutal and dangerous force among Western ruling class. No one comes even close, man. Now let's continue with some other news. Middle East, of course. Middle East, US continues to threaten whole world to make a choice, either US or Iran, by the way, right? If you do business with Iran, you're going to get secondary sanctions, we're going to destroy you, we're going to do this and that. That's usual propaganda from Washington. And for whatever reason, they are completely ignorant to the reality that world community, majority of humanity, by the way, already made a choice, right? We are standing, by the way, we, majority of the humanity, are standing with Iranian people, because they've been targeted, right? By Zionist scumbags, by Western ruling class, right? By those scumbags. It's Iranian people that was targeted. So, of course, humanity in solidarity stands with Iranian people. It does not matter we are from east, west, or north, south, man. Majority of us stands with the Iranian people, period. So why this is that difficult to understand for American elites or current administration in US, when they are coming up with such a statements that, well, world has to make the choice, are they with Iran or with US? No one is with US, man. Even Canada hates you, for God's sake. And they are your cousins. Even Canadians hate you now, US. I'm talking about US as a state entity. Of course, I'm not talking about US society, by the way, right? Which is different, of course. But I'm only talking about state in this particular case. Even Canada hates US. Mexico hates US. Everybody hates US, man. Let's be real. And why is that? Because Western ruling class used US as their battering ram, or how you say it, as their torpedo, as their baseball bat, just too freaking many times, right? And the world has enough of it. That is that, you know. And no one gonna be scared with their freaking secondary sanctions, man. At least not big boys of the geopolitics, right? Of course, US not gonna scare China or Russia, by the way, with their secondary sanctions. What they gonna do, really? Come up with another 20,000 sanctions against Russia? We are not even counting now. That's how we don't care. That's how much we don't care, man, with these sanctions. So what the hell? When it comes to China, by the way, I don't think US is in the position to even go for sanctions against China, because that will literally kill US economy. So, but nevertheless, you know how Western ruling class operates, especially in US, by the way, how much they love to act as these bullies and the tough guys, or the gangsters, or cowboys, something. It's insane, man. It's laughable to watch them, and it's laughable to listen to them, right? It's a funny, man, when they are using this word. They're picking nobody's, man. Is if they only know like 100 words, man. Or if they are picking some cheap movie or something. Anyways, that's what Besant says. It's time for world leaders to make their decision between America and Iran. Okay, by the way. Okay, thank you for letting us know. While this is happening, while US is threatening humanity, same time, very same US removed Syria from a list of countries that were designated as state sponsors of terrorism. And I mean, what you're gonna say, man? This is happening when Syria is actually led by terrorists, literal terrorists, by the way. You know, today Syria is led by literal terrorists, and US is removing Syria from a list of state sponsors of terrorism. You cannot make this shit up, man. Honestly, it's just really too much. And that's why me and many other people are saying this matrix, this world is broken. This world is just broken, man. Right? Big time. I remind you, Washington was offering $10 million for a head of al-Shara or al-Julani, or whatever the freaking name is of that terrorist that Israeli Zionists and Western ruling class put in a position of power in Damascus. Also, it is interesting that CNN came up with an article pointing out significant difficulties that US militaries are facing in terms of equipment, maintenance of the equipment, to be more precise. For example, this year alone, there was 5 major aviation accidents. For example, with their AH-64 Apache helicopters, and probably there will be some more, right? Probably there will be some more, by the way, and this is quite understandable. First and foremost, a significant portion of military equipment, including helicopters that US is operating, is old. And also very important is to keep in mind that this equipment was over-engineered from the beginning, right? because on the maintenance, U.S. military industrial complex makes almost the same amount, sometimes possibly even more than on the sales of these weapons, right? And now, when Pentagon is overstretched due to crazy policies of Western ruling class and their puppets in Washington, they are struggling to finance these programs, right, of maintenance of the equipment, and therefore weapon systems are just, you know, crashing out because yet again they were over-engineered to begin with to enrich military industrial complex, and they need constant maintenance, constant maintenance. So, by the way, in reality, I have said already in the past that U.S. military is a paper tiger, and Iran proved that. But it might well be that U.S. military is even more weaker than I think. You know, well, might be the case. We will see that soon. So we will see confirmation of this take of mine very soon when Western ruling class will go for next phase of a war with Iran, in which U.S. army gonna play key role again, right? And which will include ground invasion. And first time in a long time, U.S. military is gonna face actual high intensity war, and they are not ready for it, man. They are just not ready for it. They cannot be even trained because U.S. has no officers that know high intensity conflict. That's the deal. That they cannot even train their troops for high intensity war because they don't know. Meanwhile, when it comes to Middle East, friends, there are reports that a vessel was struck by an unidentified projectile in the Strait of Hormuz, approximately 9 nautical miles off coast of Oman. Impact disabled their vessel's power plant and brought it to standstill. And well, I guess UAE or some other, I don't know, man, entity in the region, or maybe some company once again try to pass through Strait of Hormuz without cooperating with the Iranian side. And yeah, that's what happens when you mess around too much, right? Also, Houthi spokesperson claimed strike on Saudi oil tanker off coast of Yambu. Yashir Sari said that Amzan was hit by ballistic missile, causing a fire, and that her other ship fled their area. Okay. By the way, Houthis Ansar Allah movement also claims that they neutralized basically Saudi assets, more Saudi assets. Houthis are terrorizing Saudi, man. Very little attention is being paid to this matter, but in previous programs I showed you video, isn't it, of a bombing that Houthis were conducting against Saudi forces. Saudi Abrams tank was decimated, and there are so many videos out there. Houthis are freaking terrorizing Saudi forces and Saudi assets. Terrorizing, man. Right? Saudis are nowhere close to battle capabilities of the Houthis. And it is really mind-boggling how come that Riyadh did not yet contact Tehran and beg to mediate with the Houthis so that they will have some peace. Why they started this new phase of confrontation with Houthis? Why Saudis went for it, man? How stupid. Meanwhile, I think this information also worth attention that total U.S. crude inventories, including their strategic petroleum reserves, have fallen to roughly 41 days of supply, which is the lowest level in the past 50 years. Which is quite something, isn't it? Meanwhile, new Department of Energy data released today shows their CPR itself has fallen to just 289 1.7 million barrels, lowest level since the November 1982. I remind you, dear friends, that the US consumes around 20 million barrels a day. Every single day, that's 20 million barrels, right? And if this decline continues, then you're going to see further increase in the pricing, isn't it, of gasoline and the diesel on the US market, which is already high, man. And many people are pointing out that energy cost is increasing uh, very fast in US. I'm not living there. I don't know, obviously. In different states, there is different prices, and price gap might be very significant. In one state, gallon might cost, I don't know, man, $5. In other state could be $7. I mean, I don't know how this big gap possible, but that's the case, right? So everything, there is a massive inflation also in US, massive inflation that Washington is refusing to acknowledge. Also, we have this report that US farmers face $63 billion losses as Iran war sends cost soaring. So farmers say diesel and their fertilizer prices have surged since the US attack Iran, and their crisis is being compounded by drought, low crop prices, and Trump's trade with China. And by the way, if US farmers already are facing these tremendous losses, then this loss is going to go even higher because US is now bailing out Argentina, man, big time, right? Instead of supporting US farmers, Trump's administration is going to freaking support Argentinian farmers. I mean, on one hand, yes, good, man, Argentinian people will have some break. But on the other hand, as far as I can tell, government of US should care about US citizens first, right? And then proxy regimes. And that's what Argentinian regime is for the US, right? It's their proxy. So they're going to be massive influx, massive increase on beef, especially beef imports from Argentina, by the way, which will probably drop prices on the beef in US, and that will further increase losses of US farmers, right? US producers. So yeah, US is facing some serious challenges, man. And as time goes by, the situation is only getting worse and worse, looks like. And a few more news, dear friends. You know, yesterday I said that Pashinyan, Armenian prime minister, stated that sooner Yerevan will launch a bid to join European Union, which is freaking nonsense, right? They're never going to join EU or NATO. As Ukraine never going to join neither EU or NATO. It's just that obvious, right? But I guess in order to further how you say it, man, further escalate relationships with Russia, Pashinyan being ordered by his Western bosses to make certain statements, push for certain policies, right? And that's exactly what he's doing there. And well, Medvedev, former Russian president and current deputy chairman of the Security Council, reported on that and said Yerevan, capital of Armenia, will never join the European Union, of course, but it will ruin relations with the Eurasian Economic Union, including with Moscow, for a long time. Yeah, that's exactly what is going to happen, and already happening, actually, already happened, right? But yet again, Armenia chose to go this way. Armenian people just recently supported Pashinyan's regime during the elections. Yes, you might say the elections were fraud and their numbers were manipulated or whatever. Did Armenian people fight for their country? They didn't, right? They didn't. So they accepted the results then, right? They accepted that Armenia is now Western proxy. So, I mean, all choices have consequences, right? If Armenian people accepted this new reality and Armenia is a Western proxy, then Armenia, very same Armenian people should be ready for consequences, right? And only blame themselves for what is happening and what is going to happen. That's it, right? And things gonna only escalate in Armenia because Pashinyan and his regime, they are emboldened, man. They are emboldened big time. And today, for example, they went after opposition figures. They arrested former president of Armenia and his son, and like four other people or something. So six people, including former Armenian president and leader of the opposition bloc Armenia, Robert Kocharyan, and his son have been detained in connection with the criminal investigation. According to a press service of Republic's Anti-Corruption Committee, Kocharyan is accused of abuse of office. Yeah, okay, by the way. They're going to go after everybody. Western ruling class, once politically captured this or that territory, will go all the way, right? All the way, by the way, to keep control over the territory. Nothing going to stop them. And that means they will destroy, by the way, everyone and everything that will stand before them. They will try to destroy. Now, they might lose. And there are cases when the Western ruling class is actually losing control over their territories that they previously captured politically. But most often than not, they are maintaining this control through different means, right? So Armenia gonna go through very tough times, man. Armenia gonna go through very tough times. Yet again, if Armenian people were thinking that while accepting, while not fighting with the regime, these Western assets, and accepting this new reality, they are avoiding wider confrontation. In reality, they are only further pushing the country towards even bigger conflict. That's what happens, right? And there is a say that goes along the lines of if uh, if you are choosing uh, it was a I forget how that phrase goes, man. If you are choosing between peace and dignity, if there is a if you are choosing peace over dignity, then you will lose both. Basically, you will lose peace, you will lose dignity. That's what is happening with many societies, by the way, that are choosing to avoid the confrontation, to avoid the risk, uh, and sacrificing their principles and their and moral stance. And I'm telling you, man, Armenia gonna go through some really tough times, but that's their choice. That's the choice that they made. It is surprising that being a neighbor of Georgia, by the way, Armenia is repeating literally every mistake that Georgia made, which was politically captured much earlier, by the way, by the West, right? So Armenia, which is located right next to Georgia, by the way, and should know perfectly well how damaging for Georgia was and still is that it was politically captured by the West. Still, Armenia goes and makes same mistakes. Insanity, man. It's just freaking insanity, you know. Uh, and let's have a conversation now, dear friends, isn't it? I hope you like the news program itself. Hopefully, it was informative and interesting. Right now, you know what? Let's check some media outlets for a possible breaking news. For example, let's go for TASS News Agency. Let's see what we have. Oh, CIA director arrives in Russia. Goodness me, man. Am I correct? This information was published 3 minutes ago, by the way. Now it's 17:29 here in Moscow. This information was published 17:26, 3 minutes ago. That CIA director John Radcliffe has arrived in Russia. I said yes. either CIA representative or uh, FBI representative, or maybe both and plus Pentagon gonna come. Yeah. Uh, okay, by the way. Okay. Let's see if we will get any details about this trip of Redcliffe to Russia. Um, Interesting. It is interesting what message he is delivering, or whoever is together with him, right? So interesting. Let's check some more. Russian foreign ministry pointed to U.S. involvement in fueling the church crisis in Ukraine. By the way, Vatican, I already said, man. Yes, U.S. is involved. U.S. Secret Services are involved. Obviously, they created uh, this group of criminals, by the way, that claim to be Ukraine's Orthodox Church now. I mean, they committed the unforgivable sin, right? So, F them all. So, of course, US and UK are involved, but Vatican is involved too. Vatican is involved too, man. Vatican is the biggest enemy of Orthodox Christianity. Vatican. You know? Let's see what RIA Novosti has to say. Kiev has lost her ability to use tanks received from the West, according to New York Times. Why is that interesting? But due to drones, if due to drones, well, no one side is using tanks and armored vehicles that often nowadays because uh, airspace is saturated with the freaking drones, right? So Western tanks transferred to Kiev are particularly never used by the Ukrainian Air Forces due to their inability to counter drones. New York Times reports, yeah, okay, by the way, I mean, no tank, Western or Eastern or whatever, is currently able to effectively counter the drones, man. Let's be real here. Uh, so, okay, okay. Anyways, let's go for community chat. Let's go for community chat, dear friends. I will make let me screenshot the super chats, and let's go for a community chat, dear friends. I will react now on the super chats. I will react on the super chats and let me also check Boosty, by the way. Maybe there was a question. There was a donations through Boosty, by the way. I will highlight that too, and also a commentary. Very important, interesting commentary. So I will start with those. What happened, Scooby? I mean, is Rumble is has some issues, or I see your super chat about Livada Paul in September like 3 times or something. Let me highlight this. So just a sec, dear friends. I think I screened, I made the screenshots from all the super chats, and let's go for a community chat now. Thank you all uh, for your super chats, dear friends, for your time and their attention. And I will start, if I may, with this. Yesterday, after the stream, dear friends, there was a $10 donation or 783 ruble donation from a look through. on a boosty. So, and a comment from look through. Thanks for information and your journeys. Thank you very much, look through, for your kind words and their donation yesterday on the boosty. And also there was a donation on the boosty and a commentary from George. Let me highlight this too. So there was a donation of 3,900 rubles from Georgia, and the commentary. Thank you, Georgia, or Barner account. Thank you very much for your donation, generous donation through Boosty. And their commentary. Let me highlight the comment itself because this is important. There was some misunderstanding yesterday, right? So let's clear the situation. So comment is, hi Levan, appreciate your work, Barner account. I have no idea what Permi Kumar was upset about. He read a comment where I said you too in response to his hello. Anyway, all okay. So what happened yesterday? I missed this, right? But George Barner account clearly, made it clear that he did not had no intention to upset anybody, right? And so let's keep this in mind, right? Unfortunately, I missed that moment yesterday, but clearly there was some misunderstanding. Barner account was responding to greetings, right? To hello, you too, hello to you and hello to you, right? That's it. Sometimes things happen, some strange things, and people might misunderstand each other big time. So I will assume issue is resolved, right? And that is that. Thank you for sharing, Georgia, and many thanks for your generous donation through Boosty of 3,940 rubles. Thank you. Now let's go for super chats, dear friends, and I will start with this super chat from Wayward. Thank you very much, Wayward, for your super chats and donations. And Wayward is commenting, what a lot of people fail to realize is the West does not have their industrial capacity to launch a war on Russia, China, or apparently even Iran. They rely on their myth of NATO scare everyone. I agree with you absolutely, Wayward. I agree with you absolutely. I noticed that there is a new kind of talking points that been introduced to even alternative media nowadays that if Putin authorizes Russian security services and militaries to restore deterrent with the collective West, that will require to strike with retaliation, to conduct retaliatory strikes on NATO member states that are involved in this war against Russian people, and that will make NATO unite. So Putin is not authorizing this to happen, so that he would not basically push NATO to get unite. And while saying this kind of stuff, those people, even people that been acknowledged as to be experts, they are saying that while continuing with this restraint policy, somehow NATO is more and more divided, and there eventually will collapse on its own, which is a freaking nonsense. I mean, how one can say this, man? What? How it is even possible Western world class to be any more united than it is right now? They are full of Russia hate. They are absolutely united in this Russia hate, right? And in pursuit of their geopolitical agenda of destroying Russia, destroying China, and cementing their dominance over the humanity forever. They are absolutely united in that. And when it comes to Western societies, and Western ruling class controls all these NATO member states, right? So that means that this NATO is also united on this matter. And then there is a topic of uniting. If Russia will strike back now on these NATO countries, that will unite European societies, right? Against Russia. For God's sake, man, European societies, majority of European societies hate us anyways. They hate us anyways, man. They already are united in our hate, because they've been told that it's okay if they hate all Russians, everything Russian, and so on. That's what they do. They already hate us. They already are united. Majority, I'm talking about. Thanks God, they are free-thinking people, by the way, in the West. A lot of them, they still are minority, but thanks God, there are many, many people in the West, by the way, in Europe, in Americas, right? Australia, New Zealand. There are many people that are absolutely free from this crazy propaganda of the Western elites, but unfortunately, majority is under the influence, right, of that anti-Russian propaganda, and they hate us anyways. Correct? But being hateful towards us does not mean be ready to fight against us. Am I correct, Veva? They might hate us. You know, like 60% of Germans, for example, maybe number is high actually, probably it is higher. They might hate us, okay? Or 60% of French people or Italian people or Brits. Okay, they might hate us because they've been brainwashed by propaganda tools, through propaganda tools. But if you ask them, are they ready to fight and die against us? I don't think majority is ready for it, man. I don't think majority in the West, under any circumstances, will be ready to fight with us and die in this fight. Majority, if you conduct a social study, by the way, if it comes to actual war, majority of people here in Russia will say, yes, we are ready to fight and die. That's how we operate, man. You know, we don't want to fight, and for sure we don't want to die. But if it comes to war, are we willing to fight and die? Yes, we do. Majority of us. That's our mentality. In the West, it's different, by the way, right? Because they know, no matter the propaganda deep down in their minds, they know that Russians are not threat, by the way. Russians are not coming to colonize them or to occupy them, or all the freaking nonsense that they've been told. Russians are not coming. They know it, man. One thing is to be engaged in this mainstream ideology, right, of Russia hate. Very different is to actually go and fight while staying on the track with this ideology. They know Russians are not coming, man, right? We are not coming nowhere, right? Unless we've been provoked, by the way. We would never, ever even think about striking some legit targets on NATO territories, but I do now talk about it. Many others here talk about it because those NATO countries, unfortunately, are targeting us. So we have to retaliate. This is a retaliation. But if we are not provoked, we are not coming nowhere, man. We are okay here, right? So you see, while when it comes to our mentality, well, we know, by the way, through history, and not just through history, but I don't know, we grew up with this understanding that, yeah, you have to fight and you have to die for your country, for your people, man, if it comes to it, right? And because our people were under constant attack, usually from the West, at least in the past 300 to 500 years, most recent massive attack was, of course, Great Patriotic War during the Second World War. Although right now we are also under the massive Western attack, obviously, right? So because this is very fresh in our mentality, we will answer yes, we are willing to fight and die because we know threat from the West is real, while Western people don't believe that this imaginary threat that Western propaganda is pushing, that Russians are coming and Russians going to come and Russians do this and that. They know this is all fake, man, because when Russia or Soviet Union or Russian Empire before that attacked Europe, when? Can anybody tell me? I mean, Poles might say, by the way, Poles might say, well, Soviet Union and Nazi Germany split the Poland, and well, it is unfortunate that Soviet Union took Eastern Polish territories and give it to Ukraine, Soviet Ukraine. Um, but Poles were allies of Nazis, man. Let's not forget about it. Poles were big time allies of Nazis. Pilsudski was a freaking Nazi himself, right? And was admiring Nazis. He was a massive Russia hater, correct? Polish leader at the time. It was Pilsudski, right? So therefore, Moscow clearly had some grounds for operation at the time. But let's say Western Europe. When did we attack Western Europe? Last time Russian troops or Soviet troops that were present in Central or Western Europe was Great Patriotic War, when Russian troops, Soviet troops liberated Austria, for example. And because Austria decided that they're going to stay neutral, Soviet Union withdrew forces from Austria. Many people, probably in Austria itself, don't know that this country was liberated by Soviet forces. Correct? There was, of course, Germany. But before that, last time Russian troops were somewhere in the Western Europe is after Napoleonic Wars, when Russian troops under the leadership of Suvorov, I believe, crossed almost entire Europe, including Alps, by the way, and marched through Paris. Yes. And then it was also, by the way, consequences of attack that Napoleon himself launched, right, on Russia. So what I want to say is that in the Western mentality, there is no Russian threat, man. No matter how hard they're going to push, man. I would never believe that anybody in UK, for example, will actually believe that Russia is going to go now in UK and like, I don't know, destroy, man, Wembley freaking stadium. I mean, how dumb one have to be to believe in that shit, right? That Russia is going to go into UK now and do some crazy stuff. Why? I mean, why, man? Why would we want to attack UK if not provoked? If UK is behaving right, if UK is at least neutral, then why would we even have anything negative to say about UK? Same goes for France. If France is behaving adequately, why on earth we would ever have anything negative to say about France? Even say, man, I'm not even talking about doing something against them. So you see, there is a massive difference. Western ruling class might say whatever they want, and they're propagandists, and unfortunately, certain talking points are quite loud now in alternative media too, Western talking points. But it's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. NATO is a paper tiger exactly because, as you mentioned, they have no industrial capabilities to withstand a high intensity conflict. And because, most importantly, European societies Even no matter how much is being brainwashed, or European societies don't really believe that Russians are the threat for them, and therefore they're not going to fight and die against us, willingly at least. I just don't see, man, the European societies being capable of fighting. Honestly, they had their good life for a very long time, and good life makes people weak, man. And I'm not saying all Europeans are weak, but I'm saying majority in Europe, in European societies, are probably just get too comfortable in their lives, right? And I don't think they're psychologically are ready for the hardships that war brings. So they're not going to fight. They're just not going to fight. No matter if we retaliate on NATO or not, right? Our retaliation will change nothing in this regard. So I agree with you. Thank you for sharing, Wayward. I spoke like half an hour about this topic, man. Unbelievable. Um, also, let's go for other. I already reacted on this. Let's go for these super chats. I try to be more fast in response. Also, Wayward is commenting. Scooby makes a good point. Their MIC in the US is on a whole another level on corruption. It does not mean they are working for Russia or China. When large sums money is involved, corruption will follow. Uh, what is the MIC, Wayward? MIC is in short something, right? Military industrial complex, that is. Uh, if it's a military industrial complex, then of course, I mean, this complex is a epicenter of corruption, one might argue, because they are corrupting uh, God knows how many public figures, right? Or the so-called lawmakers, either on the law. I see. By the way, we were this commenting. You froze. Yes. So it's a military industrial complex. So I got it correct. So thank you for sharing, Wayward. And yeah, of course, I mean, I can't even imagine how many people being corrupted by military industrial complex, how many people being put in a position of decision making, either on state levels or even city levels, by the way, or on a federal level. So of course, it's a tremendously corrupt, and whenever corruption takes over any system, it's finished, by the way. Corruption kills state institutions, corruption kills economical industries, right? Entire fields. Corruption kills societies, and corruption kills states. I'm a strong believer that corruption is a most dangerous threat that humanity is facing. In any country, society cannot have any more serious threat than corrupt officials and the corruption. This comes first as a threat, and then everything else, I think. Also, Waywarder is commenting, it would seem the US and the West are holding Russia and the Kazakhstan oil refineries hostage. If only someone in Russia's government had an idea how to resolve this situation. And yeah, uh, I mean, that's a good question there. Do they know how to resolve the situation? Uh, some alternative routes of logistics, okay, imports, okay, but in terms of protecting the infrastructure, uh, unless we restore the tenant with the collective West, this attack is going to continue. As long as there is a active phase of the military confrontation itself. So if in 2 3 weeks time from now they're going to be some sort of a Minsk agreement, then of course these attacks will stop for the time being. But if there is no temporary solutions in place, if active phase of the conflict continues, then these long-range attacks that are orchestrated by NATO countries will continue to. There is no solution. I mean, there is a solution, then only one, right? Or two, only two ways to resolve the issue. One is to agree on, to find, to agree on the temporary measures that West is proposing that will end the military phase of the conflict in relatively short time. Another one is to restore deterrent with the collective West. If you ask me which way Moscow is going to go, I think Moscow, under the current leadership, will go for temporary solutions, that is, freezing of the conflict. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, I think. Maybe in next 2 3 weeks time we will have some major developments in this direction. And who knows, maybe visit of CIA director, today's visit of CIA director to Moscow is related to whatever is being cooked behind their scenes, and probably is related, right? I mean, most likely. Thank you for sharing, Waywarder, and there are more super chats. Let's continue, dear friends. But before I will get to our super chat, let me once again thank Nautilus for a premium subscription gift card. Thank you very much, Nautilus, for a premium subscription gift card on Rumble. This is a $5 donation. Each premium subscription gift card is a $5 donation to the project. So thank you very much, Wayward, for this, Nautilus, for this support. And of course, many thanks to Wayward too for super chats and the donations. To Wayward and Scooby, by the way. Scooby is also very active when it comes to super chats and helps a lot, by the way. Of course, Wayward is also commenting a lot of problems Russia faces, whether we are talking about the war in Ukraine, attacks on Russian energy, e-commerce, civilians. They are all self-inflicted wars by Putin and his government. And well, if you keep in mind that Putin is in a position and was in a position always since the beginning of this conflict to restore deterrent with the collective West, on the day it was broken, or never even to allow Western ruling class to go as far as to cross that line. And he did not do this. Of course, I mean, he cannot avoid responsibility for all the consequences of absence of the deterrent with the collective West and for everything that Western ruling class is doing now to harm Russian people and the Russia. There is a clear link there, right? It cannot be avoided. 100%. Also, Wayward is commenting, if Putin had not allowed the US, NATO to cross every single Russian red line, real or imaginary, to be crossed, this war in Ukraine could have been over years ago. The mistakes made are still being made. And yet again, I mean, sometimes, I say something and then you shared your opinion in a super chat, and you might think we are like 100% on the same page on this or that topic. In this particular case, I practically said the same, isn't it? Literally like a minute ago. I did not know what was in your super chat there. And yeah, I mean, there is some obvious things that we looks like see on the same way. And I think many other people, by the way, majority possibly, but Kremlin clearly sees things differently because they continue with the policies that already proved to be failure, but they continue to pursue those policies. Anyways, restrained policy first and foremost. Total failure, isn't it? But they still continue with it. You know, thank you for sharing, Wayward. And Scooby, thank you very much for your super chat also, of course, and the donation. Scooby is commenting neither side can be trusted on their casualty claims. Where can we see their real figures? Nowhere, Scooby. I agree with you. Neither side can be trusted when it comes to casualty figures. Russian side is not even sharing any figures, so therefore, you don't even have to you don't have to trust or mistrust. There is no figures. Russian side is not sharing information. Period. I never shared nothing. It's a key regime that and Zelensky that time to time says shares some information on the matter and changes the constantly. But we don't share nothing. It's whatever talks are on the internet about casualties on Russian side is a pure speculation of a commentators, right? On internet, because Russian Defense Ministry never shared information on the casualties. And I don't think Russian Defense Ministry will share information about casualties until this war is over, and maybe even after this war will over for a significant period of time, information will be classified. After Afghanistan, after our Soviet troops withdrew from Afghanistan, there was a lot of speculations about casualty numbers. Um, and speculations were, by the way, that Soviet Union lost tens of thousands of troops, hundreds of thousands of troops in Afghanistan. Uh, and Moscow didn't disclose the casualty numbers. It was kept classified, secret. But at some point, yes, information was released, especially after Soviet Union collapsed. And Well, even though there were earlier claims that hundreds of thousands of troops were killed, in reality it turned out that initially there was reports that 19,000 was killed, and then this number was changed on 12,000. I mean, obviously, actual number still could be classified. We don't know. But when official numbers, at least on some level, was released, that number was dramatically less than all the speculations in the public. So I think something similar will happen. Now there is a massive speculations, especially in the West, right? If you listen to Western propaganda, like none of us are alive now. We all being killed in Ukraine in a war, but somehow we are still here, right? So it is what it is. You are spot on. During the war times, information about casualty numbers, always a part of informational warfare, always by all sides. It is what it is, right? So also, thank you for sharing, Scooby, and also there were more super chats. Scooby is commenting, Levada poll. Thank you, Scooby, for another super chat and to the donation. And Scooby is commenting, Levada poll in September 2022 find that only 42% of respondents approved of their mobilization, while 45 disapproved. Well, it's this first and foremost, Levada Center is Western propaganda, pro-Western propaganda. Let's say it as it is, right? I don't trust Levada Center. I don't trust Tsiom too. Tsiom I consider to be Kremlin's propaganda. There is these two names that are big names when it comes to social studies here in Russia. Levada Center is a pro-Western, Tsiom pro-Kremlin, right? Or pro-power, let's say it this way. So therefore, I don't trust numbers from Levada Center, but same time, Scooby, just imagine there is me and you, we are going on the street and conducting some studies, right? And asking first 100 people what they think about mobilization. You think what they're going to say? They're going to be happy about mobilization? No. So if we give them opportunity to answer negatively, they will probably answer negative. All these studies, by the way, it's very important. I worked in the media, right? I worked with the people that were doing these social studies, and giving their question itself, giving their answers that you are giving the interviewer to choose from, you are basically pre-planning the whole project. You know firsthand, right? Even before you started the work on the project, what's going to be the answers. It's very speculative. It's very speculative. It depends how you ask questions. It depends what options you are giving in terms of answers, and how you formulate what words you use, right? It's all already, psychologists are working, by the way, on these questions, right? On these polls. When they are conducted, text is worked out by psychologists. And it depends what answers do you want. You can get those answers. You can ask same question with the different wordings, same 100 people, and every time you might have different numbers. You will have different numbers that you will prefer, correct? So therefore, I mean, if you ask first 100 people what they think about mobilization, they'll say, oh, mobilization, yeah, too bad, right? Because why would anybody be happy about mobilization? So emotion, attitude will be negative, because how one can have a positive reaction on a mobilization, correct? But when it comes to actual mobilization, how people will react on a real mobilization, that's what matters, right? And I believe few percentage of public will go into overreaction, as it happened when first wave of mobilization was declared. Remember, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, and Russia is 145 million. So in a scale of Russia, these hundreds of thousands is just like small percentage, although it sounds big, like 100,000 people run into Kazakhstan, for example, right? Or something. You might think, wow, what the hell is going on, man? World is crashing. No, it's just 1% of society that just overreacted and start running away, And you know how much noise was created by that 1 or 2%, whatever it was. Many of those people come back to Russia after that initial overreaction, right? Many of them come back. Many still are spread all over the former Soviet Union or Soviet republics, Kazakhstan, Georgia, Armenia, and elsewhere, right? Some went to Western and never come back from the Western countries, but many did come back. And with very different attitude, especially ones that went into Europe and spent their certain time there. I mean, year plus. Those people, according to what I have read, by the way, and what I have seen, those people they come back extremely disappointed in the West, because they were propagandized, right? They were thinking that, well, Western ruling class has an issue with the Russian ruling class, right? Not with the people. But when they experienced on themselves this hatred in the West, oh, they wake up, man. They wake up. They realize, oh, no, these guys are against us, right? Against everybody. Yes, of course, because they don't give a damn, man. Neither about their own country, man, in the West, especially neither about citizens of Ukraine or the Russia. Why would they care, man? Did they ever demonstrated with the actual steps that they are good human beings? I mean, Western elites. No, man. They are most horrible elements ever existed on this planet. That's it. So I'm confident, 100% confident, by the way, that if mobilization is declared tomorrow, or I don't know, in a month from now or whatever, 1% or 2% will overreact again. There will be massive noise, by the way. Some crazy stuff will happen, right? Queues on the borders with Georgia and Kazakhstan and stuff. Western propaganda will go crazy. You see, Russians are running away. No one wants no mobilization. No one wants nothing and stuff. And then situation will calm down, right? Because this 1% of public only can make so much noise, right? At some point, they will just disappear. They will just all run away, and that is that, right? And Western society will find out that you see, not all Russians run away, man, and actually vast majority did not run nowhere, and there are uh, fully ready to fight and die if necessary. That's it, man. And vast majority of society here in Russia is psychologically absolutely ready to fight with the enemy and die if necessary to protect their families, their own societies, right? That's the case with me. That's the case with everybody else, man. Psychologically, we are ready for it. Now, how well we can fight, that's a whole different story, right? I'm not a freaking Rambo or something. I barely, I, probably I will disassemble AK, man, because I have done it in the past, right? When I was young, in a university in Georgia, Tbilisi State University, by the way, I was on the faculty of journalism, but there was a still elements from a Soviet education, right? And in a university, we had a military faculty too. That's why I was, as long as I was citizen of Georgia, I was a mладший лейтенант запаса. How you say it? I was a junior lieutenant in reserve, right? Or at least sergeant. There was then rumors that in that particular year, when I finished the university, or when I finished the military faculty, they stopped giving the diplomas of junior officer and start giving the sergeant title to everybody who study on the military faculty. It was necessary, by the way. You couldn't avoid it. It was a part of a study in university. So I went through that course, 2-year course of military studies in university in Tbilisi, right? So I have disassembled the freaking AK and reassembled this. I know I have done it. I don't remember how, but I've done it, right? So therefore, if you give AK to me, I probably will figure it out. That's how bad of a warrior I am, right? So if I'm mobilized, I'm going to be extremely, extremely careful to study, or extremely, extremely focused to study as much as I can study from the instructors, right? Because that will significantly increase my chances of survival. Because I myself have no freaking idea, man. If you think I remember anything that I learned during that 2-year course of military studies when I was a student in university, no, I don't remember nothing. Some funny episodes, right, when these students were laughing on something. We were students, man, young and stupid, right? And so, yes, I mean, it depends what kind of warriors we will be if we are mobilized. But are we willing? Are we psychologically ready to be mobilized and fight and die if need be? Yes, we are. Majority of us, by the way. Yet again, I'm only talking about majority based on my personal experience, right? In my in circle, it so happened that no one afraid of mobilization. No one wants mobilization, but no one afraid either. You know. Also, Scooby is commenting also. I would thought the Americans would be the most powerful in the globalist club. More of them at their WEF meetings. No, 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 no. U.S. ruling class is a product of a European ruling class, right? It's facets basically of European ruling class. Mostly U.S. mostly still controlled through different means by BRICS, man, by London. In some ways, US still is a colony of UK. There was some very big tensions between the two, right? At least on the surface, deep down, in depth, when you go into depth of the systemic coordination and their connection, US always was a tool in the hands of London. But on a surface level, of course, there was some hard times between the two, right? And the one might think they were even hostile to each other. But no, on a deeper level, man, US was always controlled by UK, by British ruling class. British ruling class through different means, through financial means, or through whatever other means, right? And British ruling class is the most powerful force among globalists. I mean, hands down. Neither French ruling class, neither Vatican is is that powerful to challenge London anytime soon. They dislike each other. They are targeting each other every now and then, right? Take a look what is going on in Ukraine, for example. Clearly, Paris is targeting London's assets, right? And London is retaliating on French assets. Yes, okay, but on a scale of that's a small scale. On a scale of global strategy, they are united, and so they operate like one force. When it comes to US, well, globalists have infiltrated US tremendously. They control US. I mean, intelligence community, US intelligence community is totally under control of British ruling class. Totally under control of British ruling class, by the way, right? If you think CIA is a boss with their MI6, no, never was the case, right? Democrats, by the way, are open globalists. Democrat Party, entire party is become a tool in hands of globalists, right? And the Republican Party has been infiltrated also, man, tremendously. Who is their vice president in US? Vance, right? Who is the closest allies of the Vance and potential biggest donors of the Vance? Palantir and stuff like that, AI companies. And who stands behind these AI companies? Globalists again. You see, who financed the Trump? Who was the biggest financier of the Trump? Ellison family or whatever, they give 300 million, right? Zionists. And Zionists are allies of whom? Globalists again, right? First and foremost, London. Although they truly dislike each other, right? But the Zionists are just too useful for globalists to take them out, right? So Zionists exist, therefore. They're just too freaking useful for the globalists. When it comes to midterm elections now, who is possibly going to be the biggest financier of Republicans? Elon Musk. And who the hell is Elon Musk, man? Also a globalist project, right? Pay little attention to their verbal nonsense that is coming from those people, man. Practical steps, because talk is cheap, right? Actual steps matter. And Elon Musk is a globalist project, right? So US is totally infiltrated from all sides, man. Right? You know, and US is and picture is being painted that the US is this most powerful superpower empire, blah blah blah, because that's the picture that globalists want all of us to see, so that we would not realize that US as a state is actually baseball bait in hands of globalists, and were used for decades and decades and decades and decades as a baseball beat, right? To bully countries worldwide, to bully nations worldwide, to destroy countries and the nations worldwide. And how many times they use US as a main weapon, main tool? Constantly, isn't it? So yes, there might be some forces in the U.S. That are kind of trying to play some different games, but I mean, you cannot even compare them with the globalism and with the power. They've been allowed to exist, right? Maybe because they might be useful someday in the globalist calculations. That's all. Also, Wayward is commenting. I remember the time when KGB had such a reputation. They were both feared and respected by their enemies. Not anymore. Baltics, Even the Baltics bark at the Russia nowadays. Crazy times. Ooh, it is crazy times, Wayward, isn't it? I myself struggle to understand how this many craziness is even possible, but it is possible, right? And I don't know, out of frustration, that is, I guess, every now and then I'm saying this freaking matrix is broken, right? Because this could not be real, man. Because I mean, just too many crazy stuff is happening. Actually, it is true. It is true. Uh, you know, maybe things will change one day. Maybe things will change one day. Um Globalists can be challenged, right? Globalists are major evil force in this world, by the way, right? If they are unchallenged, if they are allowed to continue, they will push this world towards extinction level event eventually, right? So that's how dangerous they are, I think. And so they need to be challenged, and I think Russia is the country that can do this. China is very powerful, of course, right? But also very careful and different. Russia is the country that can actually challenge Western ruling class and defeat Western ruling class and unite the humanity, right, in this fight. I think Russia can do this. Russia can be and should be leader of this fight and in this fight against this evil force that Western elites are. But first we need appropriate leaders for this fight, and I don't think we'll have those leaders right now. You know. Also, let's continue with did I? Oh, okay. I reacted on this, and there is also one more super chat, dear friends, from Wayward. Thank you, Wayward, again for your super chats and donations through Rumble. And Wayward is commenting. George Galloway was saying that the so-called beef Trump will be buying from Argentina is a wild horse meat. Just remember to ask your butcher next you buy beef, is this a horse meat? Oh, really? I didn't know. I mean, I'm watching George Galloway's programs on a regular basis. Mother of the all shows, right? Uh, I missed her. I did not know that there is a plans to buy wild horse meat. I mean, horse meat is being eaten all over the world. By the way, I mean, this is not new for me personally. I don't go into butcher shop and I don't buy horse meat. I never done it, by the way. But I guess I have eaten in my life some kielbasa or something which contained the horse meat. Well, might be the case. Those horses, by the way, are farmed especially in Central Asia, but I believe in the Russian regions too. There there are certain type of horses that are in farms, and they are free bottle. It's a free range farms, right? These horses are free to move around, do whatever they want. I have seen those horses, by the way, farm horses running around like crazy in North Ossetia, Alania, for example. I would not say that horse meat is a traditional dish in Alanian cuisine, but or in Ossetian cuisine, but horse meat is commonplace, I think, in Central Asian cuisine, in cuisine of some other regions here in Russia, and it's a good meat. I have heard that horse meat is actually good meat, tasty and stuff. I cannot confirm though, because even if I have eaten in some kielbasa or something, how I know, man. Uh, but nevertheless, I mean, if you're buying beef, you have to have a beef on your hands, right? Not a horse meat. And I did not knew that there was a plans to send horse meat from Argentina. I was thinking, Argentina is a big on the beef, right, on the farming. Argentinians, I believe, eat most meat on this planet. I mean, they eat meat 24/7 in Argentina. They love it out there. Probably is extremely cheap also or something. But yes, that's something new for me. That U.S. citizens might get horse meat uh, instead of beef. Actually, thank you for sharing, Waywarder. I didn't knew about it. And you see on the topic, Hanik, worst of sinners, is commenting Argentina has a beef and the Nazis, and yeah, that's. I mean, I don't know if those Nazis are Nazis again. Descendants of those Nazis are still Nazis, but Argentina does has a big German population, of course, uh, descendants of German Nazis that ran after the Second World War into Argentina, right? So I believe there is entire settlements of German settlements in Argentina that are main traditions and stuff, language and everything, right? I would not say those are Nazis too, and they are continuing to be loyal to that crazy ideology. Maybe some are. I mean, who knows, man? Right? But Argentina was famous, of course, at the time as a country that became a safe haven for German Nazis after World War II. This is it. This is it for now, dear friends. Thank you very much, dear friends. You see, Scooby is also commenting push polling. I don't think people generally like being forced to do things through, especially if it's a high risk of dying. I mean, of course, mobilization not going to be popular. Scooby, I'm not arguing with you, actually. Of course, if you ask people, majority will have negative attitude, or because why would anybody have a like positive attitude about mobilization? Why would anybody can be happy that we're going to have mobilization now? It does not work like that, isn't it? But just because I'm not going to be happy about mobilization, if it happens, does not mean that I'm going to avoid mobilization, right? I'm going to do what my duty is anyways. And vast majority of people here in Russia will take mobilization as I do, right? As our duty, as our obligation before our families first and foremost, and before our societies. And it does not matter what kind of political stand you have, who you support, who you don't. It's about our families, it's about our people, and that's all, right? So vast majority will do what is necessary, although tiny minority of course, might go crazy, overreactor. I'm not judging them, absolutely not. Some people are more sensitive, some less sensitive. So, yes, 1%, 2%, they might go wild for time being, right, and make some noise, and of course, Western ruling class, Western propaganda would love it, but a week or two, and topic will disappear, and everyone will understand that vast majority of Russians stay, and the vast majority of Russians are willing to fight and die if necessary. That's all. None of us gonna be happy about it, by the way. I mean, we are not freaking suicidal, isn't it? But are we ready to do this? Yes, psychologically first and foremost, because this is a psychological issue to begin with, right? Because once if you receive their notification, and you are going to recruitment center, you psychologically cross the line of that fear, right? That you might freaking die, because you might actually die. Risk is real. It's not a movie, right, or something. So psychologically, we are ready, by the way, to cross that line. Majority of us. That's all I'm saying. But at the same time, nobody gonna be happy about mobilization if it will declared, because I mean, honestly, man, how in any country, no matter the country, I mean, how anybody can be happy about mobilization? This is not something that brings happiness to anybody, right? So I'm not really arguing with you, Scobie. I mean, I think in some ways probably we are on the same page, actually. I don't think you will disagree with what I'm saying, that majority of us are ready to do what is necessary. I mean, it is what it is. It's just factual, rather. When previous mobilization was declared, first time in my life I was checking postal box, man. Never in my life I have checked every single day postal box. Never. And during the mobilization, active phase of mobilization, I was checking postal box every day. Just in case if I'm mobilized, I want to see their paper straight away, right? And have a time to prepare as much as I can, right? Because of course, initially there was reports that better if you buy decent gear. If you bring with you some gear. If now mobilization will happen, I think it will be organized much better. So there will be no need to bring with you your own gear, right? But initially, when first wave of mobilization it happened, there was a different information out there on internet, some suggestions what gear you will need actually, and I was thinking about it, right? If I get the paper, then I have to have I want to see it first day, so that I will have as much time to prepare myself, right? Buy some gear and do whatever is necessary. First time in my life I was checking mailbox, man, every freaking day. I did not get paper of mobilization, but if a new wave is declared now, I might well get paper this time around. You never know. Anyways, dear friends, sir, how long is it's 3.5 hours? Unbelievable! It's a 3.5 hours. This live stream, dear friends. Thank you all for your time and attention. Many thanks to members of our community that supported with their premium subscription gift card. Nautilus, thank you with their super chats. Wayward and Scooby, thank you. And many thanks to all the members of our community that are supporting throughout these years, by the way, and continue to support. Thanks to you, I'm still in this field, dear friends, of news and political commentary, and this project is still alive, So thank you. And many thanks to everybody for time and attention, of course. Have a wonderful day and take care.